Good evening. Do you believe in ghosts?
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! In the name of God!
Coming soon. Jolting tales of horror. Creepshow. From the author of Carrie, The Shining, and Cujo.
Paura di cosa?
Dicono tutti che l'hanno uccisa le anime dei morti, i fantasmi.
I Burdalak sono cadaveri che hanno sete di sangue, il sangue di coloro che in vita hanno maggiormente amato.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoid, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we are talking one of our favorite directors, Wes Craven, and one of the biggest movies we haven't really talked about yet on the show. And I'm sure you can take a guess, but I'm not going to say it right now. But join the sleaze, please.
That's right. We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for coming up on 6 years or something, maybe more than that. I have no idea. We have like 140, 150 bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series, which we are creeping up on 50 of. And we just dropped a very big, spooky one for this month. So make sure to go sign up over at patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast for anyone interested in that. And speaking of which, we did have a lot of people make the jump this week. We're going to give them their shout outs here. Going to try and do a bit of a speed round here, because there were a lot of you. We had signing up for $10 a month and joining us for the virtual screenings that we try to do on the last Thursday of every given month. We had Michael Darer sign up for $10. We had Zach Tilma at $5. Aaron Keskin at $10, also joining us for the virtual screenings, which, by the way, we're doing 2 of them for the Halloween season.
That's right.
So, get in on them. They're fun. We had David Grabinski sign up. We had Omar Mosqueda. We had Michael. We had Mr. Melendez, Donovan Spivey, the Magic Bang Bus returning to us once again.
Happy to have you.
remember reading that one out before. That's a memorable name. Brian Monroe, Boy, Daniel Butler, Gillies Larver, Emily Pavze, Sixenic, Nick Schneider, Butts Raffle, all right, Zach. We had Joey, we had Keaton Royer, we had Shoe Shippers, Alex Espino, Nayeli G, Hannah Yeager, Jonathan W. Johnson, Xavier Sodal, Raynal Mora, Ben McDonald, who signed up for an entire year of the show, which, by the way, you can do if you're interested in a bit of a discounted rate monthly. You can get an entire year in advance. We had Isha Newcomb sign up, Taylor Posey, Will Harris, Blunderdome, and is it just 505? Okay, just right. 505.
Hell yeah, represent.
I know that guy.
Yeah,
505. I know him.
Rob's friend 505. So thanks so much to all of you folks for signing up. Hope you are enjoying those bonus episodes, and we appreciate the support. That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you were listening on either one of those platforms, and I can see the stats, I can see you right now listening on both those platforms, give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the very last plug, as always, is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for our show, you can get that put on basically anything that you can think of, and you freaks have thought of a lot of things. You've bought pens, you've bought pillows, you've bought hoodies, notebooks. That link is in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com for anyone interested. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another spooky week edition.
That's right.
Spooktober.
Love it.
Weird, I love when that theme comes back. All the listeners too. We get nice comments about it every time. Jamie's Spooktober theme. Everyone likes that. We only use it for 4 episodes a year, but everyone likes it when it makes its appearance. But as always, I'm your host Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I think 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks would have heard from us, and we would have actually been just kicking off the Spooktober 2023 season. We would have had returning guest, critic and author Adam Naiman on the show to discuss a double feature of acclaimed European art house horror that and two of his all-time favorite films. We talked about Nicholas Roeg's gothic and surreally impressionistic, sort of like grieving couple psychological horror film, Don't Look Now, and we paired that with George Sluizer's more clinical, hypnotic Dutch kidnapping procedural thriller, The Vanishing, from 1988, both of which were very enigmatically structured films, lots of obsession and predestination in them, and also two of the most poetically bleak endings in horror history.
Very, very sad. And like I said last week too, just picking Adam's brain on both of those was amazing. He's one of the most knowledgeable people that I've ever spoken to about film. He's great.
Yeah, so we had a lot of positive feedback about that one, but if you haven't heard it, go back in 2 weeks ago and go check it out over on the main feed. But last week, to really get us into the spooky season, we did a very special double feature we've been meaning to do for a while, where we talked about the first of what would end up becoming many economical and visually imaginative 1960s collaborations between the legendary screen creep himself, Vincent Price, the B-movie maestro director and producer Roger Corman, and the gothic horror tales of Edgar Allan Poe. We did The House of Usher from 1960, as well as The Pit and the Pendulum from 1961, which filled our quota on foggy castles and family curses and men feeling guilty about burying women alive. Just the typical Edgar Allan Poe stuff. And so if you haven't heard that episode, that was last week over on the Patreon feed. Go back and check it out. But moving on to this week, we've spent 2 weeks really getting into the spooky mindset, but this week we really wanted to go true blue Halloween mode, and we have a very special returning guest that many will know from his tweets about Andrew Dice Clay and Al Pacino, and from his previous gangster movies episodes of this very podcast, talking to us about things like Carlito's Way and The King of New York. But aside on him, we've never indulged on this podcast, and something he's pretty well known for, and one of my favorite Twitter follows during the Halloween season. We had to have him on for this, and that guest is Rob Franco. Rob, how are you doing, man?
Hey now, what's up, baby?
Welcome back.
How's the spooky season treating you, man? This is your time. You're thriving.
I'm getting sad because it's almost over. Already,
halfway.
all I'm saying is, like, by October 10th, I'm like, it's almost over.
That's because you've already been going since September at that point, too, man.
I did start early this year, which I don't normally do, but I've had a busy month. But yeah, okay. I've been loving it. I've been, I got reacquainted with my boy Jason. I gave up on him. I gave up on him last time I tried watching those movies, and getting reacquainted with him, man, what a revelation! Because
you enjoyed Manhattan, correct?
Oh my God, let's
go. That's his favorite one. You were just telling me
that is the best one. But seeing Jason X at the New Bev with a crowded audience.
Oh, see, I still need to see that. Jason X seems right down my alley. That's the one with Cronenberg in it, right?
Yeah, he's in it for like 10 minutes, and it has the single best kill of the entire franchise, which you probably have seen, like, on Twitter or whatever. But
I think I have.
But it is good, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, Rob, we made this plan a long time ago. Maybe actually even like a year. Yeah, it might have even been like over a year ago.
Far in advance. It was. I could look back in the text, but it doesn't matter. I've got the documents to prove it.
Well, I mean, we were talking about having a Halloween party at one point, and then I was like, sure. Rob, we gotta have an audio Halloween party. We need to, we're gonna reserve the main feed episode of the show before Halloween. So this is the last episode that free listeners are gonna hear before Halloween. So this is functionally the Halloween episode of the show
right.
for this year. So we were like, Rob, what are we talking about this week, and why did we kind of think that these movies kind of encapsulated some Halloween mindset for us?
Okay, well, so I have a theory when it comes to like Halloween mindset is, so obviously when October starts, I'm only watching horror, but not all horror is in the Halloween sheen, like Halloween canon. It doesn't all, and I thought if this was the Halloween episode, we got to try to get that feel, that vibe of spookiness. So usually for like my criteria is either it's something explicitly set on Halloween, either it's Halloween or it's Hubie Halloween or it's Idle Hands or it's Night of the Demons, whatever. It's either one of those, or number 2 criteria is Universal monsters.
Okay,
The key ones though, like Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, and the Mummy. Those ones, pure Halloween sheen. And then the third criteria is as long as it has like extensive fall visual language, just leaves and all that stuff, then Halloween sheen. And I was thinking about this, but I also wanted to do 2 movies I had never seen, and I will be honest, I was more focused on what Josh hasn't seen. I should have been thinking what Jamie might not have seen. But it's kind of hard to find 2 movies that the 3 of us haven't seen. You know, that would have been way harder.
It's true. We're pretty seasoned Halloween watchers, I feel like, around here.
That's right.
Yeah. So my first thought was like Creepshow. And then Josh made the brilliant suggestion of an older anthology movie, Black Sabbath by Mario Bava.
It's true. Well, Creepshow you picked because it was one of the biggest horror blind spots for me. So this was like, filling in a huge spot of one that I've been saving for a long time. I've owned this Blu-ray for years, and I literally was like, someone's going to pick this to watch it on the show at some point. I've been saving this for a special person, whoever that person is, So Rob gets that honor. And then, when you said that, when I was like, well, Creepshow is an anthology horror film, and there's one other really well done anthology horror film that I actually don't, because I've watched quite a few of them. I've seen Body Bags, I've seen Tales from the Hood, I've seen a lot of even the anthology horror television shows, and one of the ones that I felt like just always didn't seem to get the kind of attention that the quality of its shorts deserved was the Mario Bava one, because I was like, that he gives you 3 and 90 minutes and he kind of nails them all. And speaking of Universal monsters, baby, Boris Karloff is the one introducing those, so I was like, this fits all of Rob's criteria. Boris Karloff in a fall forest introducing you to some spooky stories, and Creepshow, obviously iconic for this exact reason. Absolutely. I think that this is like a Halloween go-to for a lot of people, especially anyone who grew up on 80s horror, where, I think it really did give them that feel of, getting around a campfire and spreading these, gruesome and hilarious stories.
Yeah, and I find with Creepshow too, because it has a little bit of a dark humor. It has that fun that goes along with what you think of a Halloween film at the same time.
That's true.
I guess that would be more like a Night of the Demons kind of vibe and that kind of thing. So these are a blast, and
you want to get some pranks and smiles in your Halloween vibe, right?
Is like Creepshow is so clearly like based on comic books. It's so there's nothing really quite capital S scary about it. It's just it's spooky themes, but it's always fun.
Yeah.
Yep. Very true. Anyway. Very true. Well, I think that this is going to be great for getting everyone into the Halloween mindset, especially anyone who maybe, like me, hasn't seen one or both of them. I'm hoping a lot of people will if they haven't seen the Bava, especially, will go and check that out. But that being said, I think we are going to jump right into it here. We're going to kick things off. Let's talk about Creepshow.
Will grab you, grow on you, and give you the creeps.
No, this is going to be an entirely new experience.
CREEPSHOW, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
All right, we are talking Creepshow, the 1982 comic horror short story anthology film directed by George A. Romero, written by Stephen King, with an insane all-star cast of various like TV, sitcom, and comedy and horror legends, ranging from Hal Holbrook to Adrienne Barbeau to Leslie Nielsen to Ted Danson and Ed Harris, and even some fun cameo appearances from some Sleazoids legends like the gore makeup effects genius Tom Savini, regular John Carpenter collaborator Tom Atkins. It is one hell of a who's who of various Halloween involved filmmakers and actors, and obviously directed by George Romero, one of the sort of like Mount Rushmore gods of Sleazoids and horror alone for his Night, Dawn, and Day of the Dead trilogy, which are, still held among, the most politically angry and viscerally upsetting and depressing, not just zombie films, but basically horror films. Yeah. I remember when we covered Day specifically, because everyone Night has the civil rights kind of Vietnam era sort of like grisliness to it. Dawn has that like consumerism kind of gore fest, but the scientific ethics and like the bloodthirsty militarism aspect of Day is the one that I find myself returning to the most. Yeah. And that military guy just getting his head torn off, and you can hear the pitch shift on his scream as the vocal cords stretch. Yeah. Just one of those things that I'll like never forget. Yeah,
I think about it often, to be honest, probably too often. It's honestly one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And the way that movie
that was actually my Halloween watch last year, because I was like, that's a rewatch I need to do.
When I was in Cleveland for the tour, I actually showed my buddy and keyboardist Joel that one. And one thing I forgot kind of was how long it kind of cooks the character development and the tension before it just goes insane in the last 20 minutes. That movie is fantastic. I love that movie.
Yeah, but we've also covered some of his more low-key ones, things like The Crazies, which leans more into that sort of like political satire bleakness where, you don't really know who's infected or who's been driven into madness and all that. And we've also, I think, covered Martin on the show too, right? The vampire, Pittsburgh sort of like drug addiction vampire drama, which has, speaking of insanely bleak, dark endings, that's another one that I actually think back to pretty regularly in terms of how just gruesome and sudden it is. But this is a guy who has the power to be funny in a very dark and kind of ironic way, even though he typically uses that for more sad and kind of gruesome ends, at least from what we've covered of him. But Rob, we're talking about Romero here. Do you have like a formative Romero or like a Romero that you go back to all the time?
Well, so I'm new to the game in the sense that I watched my first Romero a year ago.
Oh, nice.
It was Night of the Living Dead, and Classic. Then I only just recently, like a week or two ago, watched Dawn of the Dead for the first time. So Day of the Dead is coming. I'm kind of new to the game.
Okay.
We're always learning. We're always listening. We're always learning.
That's right. That's right.
Especially around this time, if you feel though like some of that style came into play with Creepshow, especially here with the satirical.
Oh, I mean the relationship with Savini too, right? Who acts in both films too, and because after Dawn of the Dead, man, like that is the key one to drive you into Creepshow, because like that made him hot shit. Like that was like everyone knew his name, and alongside Stephen, the quote unquote the king of horror at this time, who was on this 1970s string of hits that included Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, The Stand, The Dead Zone, Firestarter. Like 95% of those would end up getting movie adaptations, and so it kind of made sense for these two like commercial horror artists to kind of link up and get on each other's radars, which they actually first did because King and Romero apparently had meetings because I guess Romero was going to try to adapt Salem's Lot, which Tobe Hooper would end up doing instead. Yes. And then Romero also was going to do The Stand at one point, which never came to fruition. But those meetings that they had is why Stephen King makes a cameo appearance in Night Riders in 1981. And what ended up being like, these two guys were like, dude, want to work together. Like, two projects have fallen apart, but we want to make something. And so they eventually decided that they kind of had a connection over the fact that they both grew up reading these 1950s entertaining comics, or EC Comics, which, you know, did these very sort of ghoulish and monster heavy, you know, Tales from the Crypt. They did a couple of other named ones as well, but they did all kinds of genres too. They did sci-fi, crime, fantasy, you know, military stuff, but it was comics with a very weird and kind of subversive edge to it, and it was something that they both grew up reading, and it was the kind of stuff that, you know, there was a moral panic about, and parents were like, these comics are turning our kids into little monsters and delinquents, and, you know, so this was very much, you can tell, a nostalgia thing for these like two gods of 1970s horror at the time, and you could tell that they just were like, we want to go back to our like juvenile shithead days. And I mean, King always wants to go back to his juvenile shithead days, but he was like, I'll drop the small town coming of age metaphor supernatural horror thing that like I always do, because I remember too, we talked about the nostalgia horror thing of like Christine, you know, which seems like kind of the most like self-aware, like critical of like wanting to go back, but Stephen King always wants to go back to the 1950s. This was like a rare chance for like Romero was like, okay, I'll go along with you. And so as a result, we have this movie, Creepshow, a series of tongue-in-cheek, satirical, spooky campfire stories to tell in the dark type shit, but with a lot of wacky, zany energy. And as Rob was mentioning, vivid, colorful, like comic book panel stylization, like straight up, like the kind of stuff you would expect of the guys who came up with Tales from the Crypt and then would shortly after move on to doing Mad Magazine because of the outrage over the kinds of graphic things they were putting in comics that kids were reading.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even like, I mean, in true Stephen King fashion, he has an abusive father like right away in the introduction here, as they do.
Tom Atkins, the god.
I think he's a pretty cool guy. I don't see what's wrong with Tom Atkins.
Atkins himself,
he just won. Well, no, I mean the guy. What? He's having a beer and he doesn't want his son looking at some stupid shit. What's wrong with that? So for those of you who have not seen the film, it opens with this little monster movie nerd. He's reading these comic books, and his dad, who is Tom Atkins, the god, it storms into his room, takes his comic books, and is yelling about how my son is reading this garbage. Yeah, this sucks. and then the son fucking outs Tom Atkins and goes, "What? You got fucking Playboys under your bed?" He's like, "Why are you looking at my stuff, you little snoop?"
Anyway, he fucking slaps him across the face.
Yeah, he slaps the kid. Yeah.
Threatens him with a little more.
The mom is crying.
It's just what family life is, baby.
In the words of Tom Atkins in the movie, he says, "That's why God made fathers."
That's true.
As he pours himself a fucking Budweiser.
Yeah, and he's like, "Next time, young man, I find you with a worthless piece of filth like this again, you won't sit down for a week, buddy boy."
Yeah.
You know, remember that shit. And you can just tell this kid is fucking pissed. And right outside his window, who would be out there but the hooded ghoul himself, the creep. The titular creep from the Creepshow, you know, watching the kid saying, you know, for his dad to rot in hell. We get a great theme and an animated like comic panel title sequence that ends up being sort of like the sort of like dictator of sort of the flow of the shorts as we go in between each one. And functionally the film operates as we are reading an issue of Creepshow #1. Although I did appreciate that there seems like they got a lot of advertisers and stuff for Creepshow #1. But the art too is by actual EC Comics artists. I found this out, Jack Kamen. So this is all.
Wow.
So this artwork is actual EC Comics artwork, and it is bridging all of these sequences and images together. The rest of which is basically 5 short stories, which will, you know, the one thing I like about talking about an anthology film on this podcast is, you know, we get to actually just go through each one.
Yeah.
You know, and now, but maybe before we kick off, does anyone have like a standout favorite 100%, or do you find that this is actually like a pretty consistent anthology film? Because I find most people's kind of issues with anthology films is like usually there's kind of like one that's really good and one that's really mediocre and one that's like
I think my favorite is Something That Tied You Over, personally, for this one anyway.
I was going to say the exact same one.
Yeah.
Something to Tide You Over, and I can tell you my least favorite as well, which I believe might be an unpopular opinion. Least favorite was The Crate.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, I'm excited to get into that. That's a nice little that'll tease people to listen for a little bit longer, because I think most people tend, from what I could tell, just looking at people's reviews and stuff from people that I follow and looking up some old contemporary reviews and stuff too from the time, it seemed like most people seem to really, really like The Crate. But it's also hard in an anthology film to also be the longest one. You always feel like that one sometimes overstays its welcome in comparison to one that, like, for example, Father's Day, which I think is very simple, but it is in and out. And you do have to appreciate, one that's like that. So the first one, Father's Day, is this vicious little sort of like supernatural comeuppance and guilt tale of a rich patriarch that's like not far removed from the kind of Edgar Allan Poe stuff we were talking about last week. But in this case, it's about the family's murder of the sort of domineering great grandfather who similarly to the Usher family earned his wealth in a bunch of horrible ways, including murder. But he is murdered by their great aunt Bedelia, played by Vivica Lindfors, who is this like drunken, guilt-ridden old like spinster woman, essentially, in a big hat, like rolling up to her annual dinner, nearly crashing the car.
The first shot of her that we see, she's driving one hand, and then she's got a big fat cigar with a wood tip. And she's like kind of like Cruella de Vil, but like if Cruella de Vil was Lucrezia Martel. A little bit kind of vibes.
And you're pretty much introduced right away to just a family that every single one of them is verbally abusing each other or stabbing each other in the back in some way. It is like
that's
comical
just
the
family,
way it is.
baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Once again,
another prime example.
There's a lot of healthy family dynamics going on in this film. Yeah, Tom Atkins slapping Stephen King's son for him on screen.
I don't really see the problem. Wait, that is Stephen King's son?
Joe Hill. Really it is.
I didn't know that.
Stephen King was like, dude, I want to see my kid get fucked.
He's like, I can't do it, but we can make a film about it.
I can get Tom Atkins to do it from Halloween 3.
My man took a bump of coke and he was like, you're in the movie. Shut up.
Go get smacked, son.
He was like, you don't understand. It's self-reflexive, son. It's the meta wraparound part of the movie.
That's how I want to raise my boy.
Yeah. But we get introduced to this great aunt Bedelia, who is, she's been driven insane by her, sickly father's kind of psychological abuse, mostly screaming at her for just like not getting his Father's Day cake ready fast enough. And also I think he killed her husband in like a hunting accident, which we see in like a big flashback.
The claim was that it was a hunting accident. But I think he was just like, nobody's going to have my girl except for me.
Yeah,
that was kind of the.
And it's a very sort of like cartoonishly stylized kind of like hysterical flashback where she bashes his brains in with a marble ashtray, and we're learning about all of this basically through the perspective of the younger heirs of these like these wealthy sort of like vultures, essentially. The Aunt Sylvia, played by Carrie Nee, nephew Richard, played by Warner Shook, the niece Cassandra, played by Elizabeth Regan, and of course her new husband, Hank, played by Ed Harris.
The absolute fucking god, dude.
That's right. Tom Atkins into Ed Harris. I'm having a good time already.
My god. Hell yeah. I was salivating. Ed Harris with a beautiful head of hair.
That's right. Incredible dance moves as well.
Yeah,
my
God.
He's vibing, man.
He was feeling it. Okay, keep going. Josh.
Yeah, no, but Ed Harris is the one who's, I guess, sort of like getting this introduction, because the rest of the family are telling these stories about Great Aunt Bedelia, and they're all kind of wondering, like, is there truth to this story? Is it just kind of like a family legend? Because they all make fun of the old lady. But quickly, Bedelia's drunken confession to her father at his grave, where she appears to almost be like kind of like reliving the experience and hearing his cries and the slamming of his cane and him demanding his cake. She spills her whiskey on the ground. And somehow
she does this. She does this once a year, right? This is her regular tradition. Is every Father's Day she goes there with the. She
goes home to the scene of the crime.
Yeah, and she spends an hour, quote unquote, meditating over her father that she killed, right?
Yes.
And she's just swigging the bottle and blubbering. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it goes for a while. It's quite the performance.
Yeah.
And as she is doing this, suddenly his just like disgusting, rotted, like soil encrusted, maggot filled, like Lucio Fulci style zombie corpse just like pops out of the ground.
The goopiest thing that you could think of. Like it's way over the top. How wet this thing is. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like, there's a whole lot, and this is like the first like real burst of it. But there's obviously, this is Romero, this is Tom Savini. They just did Dawn of the Dead together, so there's a lot of great visual craft, a lot of really great effects work. Obviously, they're trying to capture like the feel and tone of these comics and their kind of ridiculous formula that a lot of them have of, you know, being very gruesomely cruel to characters, having a lot of sort of like black humor and sort of like juvenile wit about it. You know, kind of being very colorfully pulpy, and you know, but and these guys are just like clearly very affectionately, lovingly recreating the exaggerated style of it, from like the canted angles, the compositions, the ridiculous acting styles at times. Like there's an animated energy to it that even when you're seeing something that's like obviously spooky, a zombie about to come out and strangle this woman, it's through like these bursts of like primary color lighting. There's like a split diopter shot hitting right on cue as the hand is coming out.
His motivation is that he wants his punch.
You know? Yeah, exactly. Like there's an animated glee to even showing you this, you know, this thing, and it's very artificial and like studio, but it also still has like that tangible practical effects work that's still gross. So when he proceeds to strangle her to death and kill everyone, it is just like, you know, it's really funny and it's silly, where he's like, "Where's my cake, Bedelia? Like, I want It's Father's Day. Where's my cake?" And meanwhile, he's just like using telekinetic powers to crush Ed Harris's skull in the cemetery, or, you know, just, you know, being, you know, getting
one of
doing
them is
some like crazy shit.
Well,
one of them is super...
we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. So he kills Bedelia. He pops out. He strangles Bedelia. Meanwhile, Ed Harris and company are back at the mansion, fucking dancing up a storm. And then,
he's lighting his matches like he's like Elliot Gould in the Long Goodbye.
He's going Elliot Gould Long Goodbye mode. He's got strike anywhere matches, and man, he looks good doing it. He really, he's got the fucking stuff. Smoking the unfiltered Lucky Strikes or whatever he's smoking, and he goes out for a walk because he was dancing a little too hard. I think, and it's clear they don't like him. He's clearly like a redneck from the country, and they're old money. And they don't like Ed Harris. So he goes out, he has a cigarette, and he's walking. They're waiting for Aunt Bedelia to come, who never came because she got strangled by the old man. And he sees the old bottle of Jim Beam. There's about a shot left. Picks it up, he smells it, he like sloshes around, he looks both ways, and he's like, fuck it. He's about to take a fucking swig, and then he trips. And he falls into the grave next to the dead Aunt Bedelia, and then the tombstone of fucking Grandpa comes and smashes his head.
That's right. Yeah, and I love the look of all of this, like the foggy family cemetery right outside. Like
okay, so we're talking Halloween sheen. We got fog, check. We got a full moon, check. These are all the tropes. This is what we need.
Yep.
You got like vines coming up the tombstones and stuff.
Coming up the tombstone.
It's what you want. It's everything you want. And again, it's just there's something that's like artificially comic booky about it, but it's still the production design is still very, very good, and yeah, very much gets me into that headspace. Yeah,
I think the one of the kills is just so blunt and violent, where he just twists the head of the sister, like just
snaps her
incredibly
neck
quick.
like a fucking twig. Dude.
Yeah, and you see, because of the Savini makeup too, you see like the twist of the skin and everything like that. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, Exorcist style, spins it right around. Well, and this one obviously ends too on like one of the probably the best images in the entire film, which is the zombie patriarch taking the ant's head that he twists off, putting it onto a silver platter, and making his Father's Day cake out of it, complete with icing and candles on it. And he's like, "I got my cake, happy Father's Day." It's like such an amazing
maniacal
image
laugh.
that when it turns into a comic book panel of like the other two living family members just like screaming, looking at this. It's like such an actual great comic book composition.
And you know what? Truly, like it is a total representation of the tone of Creepshow, because when I'm looking at that image, my thought is not, "Oh my God, that's terrible." It's, "Man, looks like a good fucking cake."
That's hilarious.
That's part of the fun. You're like, "Damn, that looks appetizing. I would eat that bitch's head."
Yeah, I think we can all agree.
And that is Creepshow in a nutshell. You're watching it, you're like, "That's fucked up," but I'd have a slice of that shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's part of the appeal of even EC Comics, that it was meant to shock, and it was meant to also provide a kind of like silly escape for kids who would get to see like an annoying or an evil adult character just like literally get their perverse or ironic just desserts. And in the first case here, it literally is served as a dessert, but it's like this very grisly and it's this very mean-spirited and funny dessert. And yeah, it's a perfect way to open this, because it sets the tone for everything that you're about to watch, where it's like, yeah, if that's just like not your tone, you're watching the wrong movie, unfortunately. Yeah, because that's what the rest of it is going to be, and that's the attitude these guys have, and these guys clearly are having so much fun putting that to screen. And the one thing I'm really happy about in this film in particular is just that there's so many films that aim for a tone like that, and just they miss it because they don't actually put the effort behind the camera. They just kind of lean full parody style. But again, this is shot by Michael Gornick, who is Romero's DOP on Martin and Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, and the Savini makeup effects, obviously, who, the head explosion on Maniac, the carnival chaos of Texas Chainsaw 2. So while this is being like conceived in the realm of parody, it is still filmed like the real thing. And we've talked about that a couple times on this show, that like that's the ideal sort of like pastiche if you're going to make one, something like Last Action Hero, where it has all that amazing energy to the film of like being this silly thing and pointing out the ridiculousness of certain genres and tropes for a laugh, and but still stylistically indistinguishable from the real thing enough that you're like, this is a real movie, and this has this delivers on the goriness of that and gives you the ridiculous image that you want out of it, which the mileage may vary on some of the specific shorts as a result, because personally I think the second one is maybe the one where it goes the most like wacky parody. The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill.
It's pretty much just a comedy in a sense. Besides the
keep going, Jimmy.
Just besides the general fear of like something kind of consuming you that's completely unknown, like that's definitely scary. But just, I mean, having Stephen King do his like cross-eyed comical performance, it's very animated, and it's almost like a Three Stooges kind of. Yeah, it's very it's hilarious, honestly. But it does take away what you kind of get, that balance of horror and comedy that you get in some of the other ones. So it is silly, very, very silly.
Yeah. Very silly. So to the listener, the second short is The Lonely Death of Jordy Verrill, who is a farmer played by Stephen King, a meteor gets into his farm and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be rich," and you see his fantasy and like the guy,
full like backwoods yokel voice,
you know? and in his fantasy of him getting rich off of selling a meteor, I believe the number he's getting is $200.
Yes, and he's going to the Department of Meteors in his local college.
And the farmer, Jordy Verrill, is played by Stephen King, who is going full bozo mode, eyes crossed the entire time. And the second this started, like 2 minutes into it, my first thought is, how have they never done a fucking Simpsons Treehouse of Horror on this one, featuring Cletus, the character?
Oh, like totally.
It would have written itself. The whole thing.
What if Cletus was in the Blob and saw the meteor crash? I could see it.
Pretty much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Jordy Verrill, he touches the meteor and it burns his fingers, and there's like a kind of a green residue. He's like, "Oh, this is fine," and then he pours water.
Well, at first he's like, "Ew, meteor shit."
yeah, meteor shit.
But then he's like, "Maybe I can glue it together in the morning, and like it'll be because he has another fantasy too that like the meteor split in half is now worthless, and they won't pay him $200 to pay off his bank debt." They reiterate. They were like, "You are not getting your $200." Yeah, they were like, "This man is the most like moronic, impulsive person who like clearly." I mean, this is one of the things where I'm curious how people would read it, because so much of EC Comics was kind of about like characters very much like deserving a comeuppance, and this is the one character where that gets the most out of whack. Like, this guy's not like evil or he's stupid.
Yeah, he's just trying to pay off a loan. You know, he's just trying to. He's a working man, and then he starts like fantasizing. I think there's a third one where he fantasizes about getting the things
doctor
off, and it's like incredibly painful and all of that. But once again, it's done very cartoonishly, and that's kind of the style of it.
Well, because it's worth noting, he gets that shit spilt on his hand, and as a result, he starts realizing that his skin and his house and the things that he's touching, his property, are starting to grow this very aggressive alien vegetation, essentially just like, you know, evil grass.
Yeah.
You know, aggressive grass is starting to.
It kind of reminded me of the hair bit from Body Bags with Stacy Keach.
So fucking good. Yeah, because because he's trying to get the long, luscious like metalhead locks, and then they actually starts growing like everywhere on him and stuff. It's a good one. Body Bags is a little uneven, but it's fun. I like the John Carpenter short in it too. I was going to bring it up later because it's one of those ones that like it's such an overt like Creepshow is why that movie exists. Sure. Like Creepshow, the popularity is why, you know, something like that came out. But yeah, the Stacy Keach hair one in that is great, and it's very, very similar to this, except for that Stephen King is, again, he's a moron, so he's like, well, I'm just going to ignore that, and I'm just going to watch wrestling on TV
and
just like
vodka,
get drunk. Yeah.
Well, first he's drinking, he's just having a beer, and then he like his body is turning into a fucking little like a gillyweed suit. And then he's like, he's
having anxiety-filled fantasies.
Fucked up. He's like, I need to get fucked up. This sucks. So
because the first thing is he's like, I'm literally going to call the doctor. Juice. And the doctor is like, he imagines the doctor pulling out a meat cleaver to be like, well, we're just going to chop your hand off.
Yeah, cutting off the fingers. Yeah, because it starts off just his fingers, and then he's imagining the doctor will be like, we're going to have to cut off your fingers. He's like, no. Which, you know, at this point, it's like, man, he should have just had the doctor come and cut off his fingers.
Gotten a little bit.
So then he's like, I need to get fucked up. So he
gets fucked up in the funniest way I've ever seen.
He gets a jug of orange juice. He pours it in a pitcher, and then he's like looking for booze. He finds a bottle of vodka. It's like, oh, thank God! And he pours it in the jug of orange juice, and this was my favorite. Yeah, he stirs it with the bottle. It was so brilliant.
I've never seen that before.
I loved it. I took a note specifically. I was like, that is a god. It reminded me of.
I think Stephen King came up with that one for sure.
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen this. There was a clip of Conan O'Brien going to hang out with Hunter S. Thompson. And they're at his like ranch where he has a shooting range.
Yeah.
And they're shooting guns, and then he has like a little butler giving them drinks. and Hunter S. Thompson like sticks his finger in Conan's drink. He goes, "This is how we fucking mix it," and he mixes it around with his finger. Kind of reminded me of that. Anyway,
is that the same one where he ends up in a gunfight with his neighbor too?
I don't know.
Okay,
but anyway.
Great stuff.
So we got Jordy Verrill. He's getting fucked up off the orange juice and vodka. And he's
grass is growing everywhere.
Time.
The makeup effects by Tom Savini are pretty fucking incredible of this shit just growing all over his body. Like, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, what would make me feel better? I should have a fucking bath. And then his brain is like, Jordy, you moron, you lunkhead. Like, the water is what they want. You don't.
Yeah, his ghost father appears in the mirror to remind him that, like, dude, put two and two together.
Right.
Grass. What do you do to it? You water it, bro.
Yeah.
Like, think about that for a second.
That's
and
what
that
set it
he's
off
like,
in the
that's why.
beginning. It split the meteor in half.
But then he's like, I don't care. He's like, I don't care. I feel too bad. So
I do love the choice in the filmmaking that even the water like looks seductive. It's like shimmering.
Yeah.
Like the alien is like literally manipulating him
like
to go
one of
into
the
it.
most beautiful shots of the whole thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, just him drawing a warm bath. He's like, wouldn't you be less itchy in here? You know, Mr. Jordy Verrill, come on in. And he just dives right in. And obviously, eventually, too, it ends up just growing everywhere. It's all over him. He literally is just this giant walking, like, grass alien man.
Which does lead to like one of my favorite images of these shorts, even though this one isn't, my favorite short by any means, which is the shotgun moment that Savini just absolutely nails. It's so fucking cool. Like
he's so despairing in his vegetative form. He's like, stick a double barrel in my mouth.
Yeah.
It went from being like the comic relief short to being like the saddest ending because like the whole thing is just about this poor fucking idiot farmer who's down on his luck, right? Mm-hmm. And he thinks he hits it big. He thinks he finds this meteor. He's going to be rich. And then he becomes a fucking grass monster. And then now he's a fucking grass monster. He's got a shotgun in his hands, but like he doesn't know if he's going to be able to successfully kill himself. And like his final words are, please just let me have good luck for once. And by having good luck, he's saying, let me be able to successfully kill myself.
Yeah.
That is so depressing.
Oh, it is.
I felt so bad.
It goes from Stephen King's cokehead
awful.
Side to his like drunken side by the end. Okay.
Yeah, it really, the ending of it made me feel so goddamn bad.
It is bad. And like the way that it's done is one consistent shot where you see like his head kind of moving as he's talking. He's completely covered in this point, so you can't really see his mouth, but you see movements. And he has the shotgun set up, and Savini does an amazing headshot and everything, and it's all in one consistent shot. So I imagine they have him like lower, and there's a cover of some kind for the head explosion, but it looks so good. It's really incredible, and it is pretty sad given what the rest of the context
and this is
is.
one of the only ones previously based on a Stephen King magazine short that he had already written called Weeds. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get a chance to read it, but everything I found about it led me to believe that it wasn't like a funny short at all, that it was like an entirely just like tragic, brutal short story. So for the movie to kind of blend it with the rest to make King's work kind of feel more like an EC Comics thing, I think that's when they started heightening. Mode. That's when they decided to add the goofy aspect of it. And also, apparently, it's worth noting that the original cut of this film was nearly 3 hours long, and they couldn't, they were trying to decide if they were going to like just cut an entire story or if they were going to cut certain, ones down. And because they obviously ended up getting this down to 2 hours. And from what I could tell from one of the interviews I saw with one of the editors, because there was like 4 editors on this thing, this was the one that was decided upon to cut down the most. And I'm not sure if that was because they felt that King's performance was a little wonky, or I don't know, but they were like, the Jordy Verrill short segment was the one that absolutely took the most of a running time cut.
I wonder if it was just of him, more of him realizing that it's growing on his body, like just more freak out moments or something like that. I'd be curious. But
yeah, I don't know, but I don't mind it at all. But it is one that I could see how it could maybe overstay its welcome if it was just more of him being a dumb yokel for like 20 minutes or something.
Totally, yeah.
Like as is, I think it works, and I think Rob's right too that maybe the sudden change from goofiness to just like absolute like depression shotgun to the head as like an alien vegetation, and the grass just ends up spreading everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the short. They're like the whole world is doomed.
well, so when the last shot, so the last shot is it's showing that it's not just Jordy Verrill who's becoming a grass monster. The whole world is becoming all grass. And in my notes, I wrote down, nature is healing itself. We are the virus.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
Kill
That's
us
right.
all.
But following Jordy Verrill, we have what it sounds like might be an agreed upon, like kind of like favorite segment. This was the one that kind of surprised me the most. Something to tide you over, which is maybe my favorite one because number one, it has the god of silly pranks and mugging, Mr. Leslie Nielsen of all these Zucker and Abrams movies, Airplane, The Naked Gun.
Such a funny man.
Some of the later scary movie sequels for anyone who's a fan there. And it's essentially him just going sadistic beachside jigsaw mode on a young, handsome pre-Cheers Ted Hansen, which to me, when I first like found out like that's what it was, I was like, oh, this should absolutely be the funniest one. Like that's such a ridiculous concept, but it is weirdly enough like the bleakest and like most straight-faced in terms of mood. It is one of the darkest ones because even though Leslie Nielsen's like a silly performer, he plays this rich dude pissed that his wife is cheating on him with such like vindictive glee, and he's like, when he's pulling up to the house and he's playing a tape of his wife just like begging for help and like making her lover Ted Danson like go for a drive with him so he can see her, which is basically what the serial killer does in like The Vanishing, he plays
like with such self-satisfaction the entire time. Like there's so many images of him just like laying on the bed looking at what goes on, and we'll get into the details, and he's just so satisfied with himself, smirking and drinking and just celebrating what he's done to these people. It's a crazy Leslie Nielsen performance, honestly. It's great. And I like how it just starts like right away. He just gets to the door and this whole interaction begins where he's gonna take him and teach him a lesson. It doesn't waste any time whatsoever. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite. So to the listener again, the short opens with Leslie Nielsen confronting the man Ted Danson who is sleeping with his wife, right? And Ted Danson's like, "Look, sorry, this is how it happened. She wants out. Whatever. You don't even love her." And he's like, "You're right. I don't fucking love her, but I don't give a shit because I own her." And
it's a point of honor.
He's like, I don't like people fucking around with what I own, and I own her, so I'm gonna teach you a lesson. So he's like, why don't you come with me? Let's take a ride. He's like, I'm not going anywhere with you. He's like, oh yeah, well she's gone. I see her again. You'll come with me. Like, oh, I guess I gotta go. So he takes him to a drive to the beach, and then he digs a hole, and he's like, get in. And he buries Ted Danson to the neck. It's terrifying. And he's really playing it so you forget he's like a very good actor because you just remember him from Naked Gun, Airplane, Scary Movie 3, whatever. There's this like cold, sick presence there, and he's saying things like, "Oh no, I'm just insane." He's straight up just saying, "Yeah, no, I'm not sane. I don't care about this woman, but I'm not sane. I'm just a man of principles." Like it's like what?
I actually remember this was one of the movies. I never saw it in full when I was younger, but when I was flipping through channels around Halloween time, I still was aware of Leslie Nielsen because I'd seen other scenes where he was doing parodies and stuff. So I always thought of him as a comedy guy. So I was just flipping through channels and I saw this, scene where you see Ted Danson with his, he's buried up to his neck. Leslie's saying what he's saying, and there is still a little bit of tongue-in-cheek just because of Leslie's character. So I was thinking, in the context of whatever I was watching, it was kind of a parody. But I remember thinking that being buried up to your neck as the water's coming is the most, like, one of the most terrifying thoughts that I can actually think of, for me personally anyway. I'm kind of claustrophobic, so that's a huge thing.
I was like, how different is it than like The Vanishing, when he's all of a sudden you're in a coffin buried underground and you're just like going to, suffocate to death, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was interesting. Like this image, at least, has just stuck with me for years and years and years. And so to finally see it in context too was great. Because like I said, this is my favorite short of the bunch.
I'm now realizing that there's an homage to this in friend of the show, Eli Roth's film, Knock Knock.
Knock Knock.
Oh, yeah,
that's right,
totally.
Yeah. Keanu buried up into his head.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Watching the iPhone. Anyway.
Oh, yeah,
I was gonna say that's true. One of my favorite details about this is he after driving Ted Danson to his beach house at Comfort Point, which is obviously a very good bit.
Yeah.
And having him, buried neck deep so that the tide will consume him and drown him. He also whips out like the TV VCR, like security broadcast combo of his wife, Becky, who was already in the same equivalent, like Saw trap, essentially, where he's just like, else. She's already, drowning essentially. And Leslie Nielsen, I think just because it's such in stark contrast to how ridiculous Stephen King played his performance, like Leslie Nielsen even delivering ridiculous lines like, if you don't lose your heads, you'll have a chance to, like wait out the seawater and stuff. Like, obviously he's being like a bit of a prankster, and he's maniacally laughing and like sipping a cocktail and everything. But I don't know, there's something about it that just in terms of tone, it feels just more unpleasant. There's like a pounding kind of synth score to it. He goes from kind of enjoying watching them drown on screen to just like playing it out for a long, like an atmospheric length of time, to the point where it kind of just becomes like just dark and like
it's just torture,
we're just
at
watching a guy
point.
Drown to death.
Like they do actually spend some time kind of building the suspense of the water getting more and more like it's overcoming them more and more. I remember that there's one shot where he looks back at the television, and you see for the very first time Rebecca's like head get completely covered by water, and her scream as she does it. And it's just it is honestly terrifying. It's one of the more horrifying things that you see in the movie, I would think. And they just linger on it.
And that great image of Ted Danson's head completely submerged underwater after like vowing
shot.
that he was going to get him, just like angrily staring, his hair looking like he's like a Dragon Ball Z character or something. Just
and there's like a red coloring too, right? Like, there's a red glow coming off of his face.
Yeah, he does kind of.
Yeah, I mean that's
almost dead already. That kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things too I like is that the sudden bursts of like color when something crazy animated like that happens. Like all of a sudden a monster will jump out and like a piece of like red lightning will strike behind them, and then like a character's face will react to it all shocked, and they'll disappear into like some like what looks like a green screen background, and like their faces will get lit up by like a giant like tungsten light with like a turquoise filter on it or something like that, and
what's great about this is, besides it doing a little bit of the jigsaw thing, I guess too, where he's watching them in his bed and drinking, like we kind of previously said, they also do end up doing a little bit of the fog, where it's like a ghostly sea zombie coming to get them, or get him specifically. So it's cool how it takes all these different these different references, I guess. It's a very like dynamic short story.
Well, because he later goes out to dig the tape out of the water, and there's no sign of his body there anymore. He's like, whatever. Things get taken by the tide. That's just how it works, And he's just, Nielsen's just walking around in his tracksuit trying to decide which of his various murder tapes he's going to watch for fun that night, which again, it sounds like ridiculous while I'm describing it, but it's just, it's kind of dark.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously in the EC Comics fashion, it's not over until this guy has had his punishment or his comeuppance. The spooky ooze hit the soundtrack, all that like old school sort of like sci-fi horror vibe. It almost sounds like there's like a theremin going during the part when the waterlogged monsters of the two characters he's just killed, Ten Danson and his wife, are coming across through the security cam footage. These like zombie like shadows begin to make his way into the house while he's showering. These images of fog and aquarium tanks and these like canted angles of like his like thick 80s carpet as like the wet feet are hitting it and stuff like that. And then love the shadow on the door as he's about to pull it open, and he yanks it open. It's that huge, just like punch in canted angle. You could imagine the comic book panel of it, of just these like green corpses, like drenched in seaweed, just like walking their way in like zombies. He's like shooting them in the head with his gun, and they're like actually leaking out like green goop everywhere and stuff like that.
It's disgusting. It's horrible. And what's so great about like Leslie Nielsen is that so in the beginning of this short, he's so terrifying and scary, but once he thinks he kills them, he's back to being goofy, wacky Leslie Nielsen. He's watching them, he's laughing like a psycho, and then even when he's being haunted by them, he's like, ah! It's kind of weirdly funny, and where like there's something wacky and silly about it. Mm-hmm. Which is not how he was at the beginning of the short. The performance changes, and I think it's. I don't know if it was intended. I don't know if it's like something he just can't help himself but be kind of wacky.
Yeah, well, he's and the character is naturally getting more hysterical, right? As these zombies with their like bubbly voices you can't hear through their like rotted throats, and they're reaching out for him. And yeah, he just gets a lot more like sweaty and wide-eyed, and and it is a bit of a ridiculous situation to be in, and obviously a hugely ironic situation to be in for him. And my favorite part is when the zombies enter a room. They have like this lighting setup that is like the zombies are in the room. Everything is lit to make the whole room almost look like the same rotted color as them. Yeah. And there's a part where Leslie Nielsen, he, manages to get himself into the bathroom. He locks himself in, and the lighting changes back to normal because he's back in his bathroom. And, he's like, oh my God, thank God I escaped though. Turns around, and like a classic comedy beat, but it's a jump scare. Bam, the zombies are actually in the bathroom and disappearing right behind him, and the neon greens and blues instantly hit back in again. He's like, you can't fucking escape this.
Yeah, you doomed.
Can't, Yep. And awesome. They're taunting him, being like, if you can hold your breath, and, trying to drive him insane like a Vincent Price character or something. And then they do actually end up burying him the exact same way. And just Leslie Nielsen being like, I can hold my breath for a long time,
like a hysterical confidence. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Awesome. That's my favorite for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That one is a blast. And the one right after that is definitely the longest one, and definitely the one they commit the most to, and is the other one that
clocking in at 38 minutes.
Oh wow,
it's pretty long.
Yeah. 38 minutes, yeah.
And it is the one that is also the other one based on a previous Stephen King short. And I think with this one, the reason it appears to be the one that got cut the least of any of them is because there is a pretty intensely mean perspective to it that I do think they found incredibly funny, and they just wanted to keep indulging with further and further. And this one is called The Crate. And it has two intersecting threads to it. One is a university janitor named Mike, played by Don Kiefer, who discovers a weird cobweb-covered wooden crate behind a grate under the stairs of the university he works at, labeled June 1834 Arctic Expedition Julia Carpenter. Is this a shout out? Is this the thing? I don't know.
I saw it. I picked it up.
To which he calls Professor Stanley to help him out with at a faculty party, where we get introduced to the other section of this, where we see him hanging out with his best friend and colleague, the very straight-laced and timid professor named Henry, played by Hal Holbrook, who is this character very dominated by his drunk and obnoxious and abusive wife, Wilma, just call me Billy, and played by the incredible Adrienne Barbeau, whom a lot of people should remember as the radio DJ from The Fog. Speaking of Jamie's The Fog reference, there's a lot of Carpenter going on in here.
There is,
I mean, Carpenter's got Halloween vibes, Halloween mindset. He is the Halloween guy. You know,
she is not as soft-spoken in this performance.
and to be clear, like what Josh is saying, like really every scene with this guy and his wife is very much like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when they're speculating about whether Cliff Booth killed his wife or not. The scene leading up to it. Every scene that he's interacting with his wife is like that. Like she's just being a drunk bitch, and and all of his friends are like, "God damn!" Or it reminded me of that, and it reminded me of the beginning of Godfather 2 when Fredo's with his wife, and she's like, "This is why you never marry a wop." Like she's just drunk, falling over the dance floor, her titties are out. That's just the whole fucking vibe. And so it reminded me of those two brilliant scenes.
Yeah, like her introduction.
Everyone absolutely hates being around this woman.
So they all hate it, and he's just like, she's yelling at him, and he's literally fantasizing about killing her in front of
the first time he fantasizes, I lost my mind when he just whips out like the fucking 6-shooter and dirty hairy fucking domes her. Like I was like, holy shit. And not only that, everyone cheers.
They all clap. They all fucking clap.
They're like,
it's awesome.
He's thinking in his head, he's like, you all agree. You all want this too, not just me.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the balls to really follow through on it, and every time he imagines strangling her with a tie or something, he just snaps out of these fantasies, and she just like further belittles him or emasculates him or mocks him for wanting to play chess with his friend or having to work or whatever.
I love how it turns into like it's got this completely normal lighting that you'd find in any suburbia or whatever. And then as soon as he turns into like the strangle or something, it goes into that red giallo lighting right away. I love the changes that they do consistently throughout the shorts. They're great.
Yeah. You got it, Josh.
Yeah, I was gonna say his part is sort of building entirely on its own, and you might be like, well, okay, how is this guy who wants to kill his wife? How is this gonna interact with this other segment of Stanley and the janitor? Who are, chisel wedging their way into this crate and like ominously ripping the nails out. It's pretty tightly sealed. I don't know if you should be opening this, guys. Although I gotta say, I love the cartoon like production design, like how big the crate is and the giant chains on it and everything.
How long it takes them to open it. They literally show like every single nail coming out of that crate.
Oh yeah, they're really building tension of being like, what the fuck is in here? And they hear little like mogwai sounds like inside it. There's a little furry monster, and it's basically like this like furry like yeti critter with like giant like snarling fangs.
Looks like a cartoonish gorilla. It's not like that's the kind of the problem I had with it is that the monster.
Oh, you didn't like the creature.
It just looked like a big gorilla. It wasn't that special to me. But anyway,
apparently it was supposed to be based on the Tasmanian devil, which is why it has like that sudden like chaotic like I'm just gonna like yank someone and destroy them.
I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
Although, and I do think that Romero and Savini get to have some of the most fun with the violence here of just having the janitor's like arm yanked into the crate and the blood is dripping down it, and we can hear it. You can hear it like gnawing on his hand, and then he pulls him deeper in. He pulls his head in, and then blood is gushing down his entire like torso and stuff. And then he drags the whole body, and he's like bite by bite, he's just like swallowing this guy. It's a very gruesome effect.
And then he later on too, you see see, I think that same guy, he escapes after he sees the janitor get killed, and he runs to tell one of the students what's going on. And they go in to inspect. And
one of the annoying grad students who's just like, well, I'm not sure if I believe you. What if we measured the boot? And I was like, great idea.
Yeah, go ahead, bud. And look what happens.
Well, wait,
he gets one of the most gory kills in the whole movie.
But you know what's ridiculous? Wasn't that guy campus security? The guy
was he like a prefect or something?
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're like, let's call campus security. Okay. No, I think that might have been me crossing dialogue for
because I think
I think you're right. I think the teacher suggests that they like call security or the cops or something.
Security, and then the kid pops up, and then for some reason
the kid's like, no, let's not call anyone. Let's investigate it ourselves. And then you know he goes inside, and the giant fucking monster claw slashes his face completely open. He bites into his neck, and it's like this awesome like chunky gore and huge blood spurts. Like classic Tom Savini, like Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, biting and gore effects.
Yeah.
And this guy's just hungry, man. He's just, he just wants to hang out in his little corner underneath the staircase. And
my man has been locked in a box for fucking 200 years.
Yeah.
That's right.
He's starving.
150.
130. 150. Yeah, he's hangry. He wants a fucking Big Mac. And you know what? If it happens to be a grad student, he'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing that this short really has going for it that I think most people latch onto is the fact that you're like, well, there's this monstrous little creature aspect, and there's this guy who hates his wife. And the idea that they come up to connect these stories, that's so classic EC Comics, like perversely grim and like just like very mean-spirited and ghoulish, but in like this way that's meant to be really cathartic for this guy that we're identifying with. Is Stanley showing up to his buddy Henry's place hysterical, relaying all the story of this horror he's seen, and he hears all this and all he can think about is, wow, there's a little monster that's getting rid of bodies and killing people and destroying them.
Not a bad idea. I don't have the balls to do it myself, but the monster,
he could. I see how we could, come to a compromise here.
But I will say that's kind of what my issue with the short was. And I'm not usually like a nitpicky guy, but it felt really long, and I didn't really understand what the necessity for the juxtaposition of the two professors was. Because it could have just been this guy with his bitch annoying wife, and then the guy's like, I found a crate. And then it's just him. He calls him, and he's like, oh, I know who I can send here. I didn't understand the need for the relationship. It just to
like
me
the best friends aspect of it.
Yeah, because even then, like they didn't really play up on that enough. And then at one point, the one guy is trying to break up with Henry. Like he's trying to friendship break up with him. He's like, I don't want to play chess with you. I've got some 19-year-old undergrad I'm trying to bang. But they kind of don't really play up on that enough. And then
I do like that he uses that for his gossipy note.
Yeah, no, that is good. That is good. When he's like, what's great is the letter that he writes his wife is like pretty like, if it were true, it would be like really scathing his buddy, and his wife is just reading it like, oh, what kind of stuff did he get into now? It's like, you're laughing about this? Like it's just gossip? Like it sounds like he's cleaning up his buddy's like brutal, horrible assault of like a student, and she's like, "Oh, that guy, he's crazy." Like, he's just
also she's like prepared to go and help. She's like, you always know what to do in a situation
I kind of just want to see, I want to see what he got himself into.
Yeah, but I also really like the just the shooting and editing of that whole sequence, where like this is a totally expository sequence of her reading this letter about this information, but it's also cut together with him like cleaning up and like setting the stage to like lure and trap his wife in. There's this very moody like piano score kicking in while he's like planning the murder, and the cross-cutting of her reading the note and walking her way down, and it's a very moodily done little sequence where you're just totally perversely swept up in like this guy's scheme to murder his wife. And the short has had you identify with like she's kind of annoying, you kind of want to see the monster get her, and also this monster's hungry, and so it's kind of like we are killing two birds with one stone. And the short kind of gets you to identify with that perspective, which is why I think it's considered like the most like kind of mean-spirited and perverse in the way that it is. And Hal Holbrook too is pretty good, the way that he's like laughing with excitement and nervousness when it actually comes time. Like he's kind of like fucking it up, honestly. She's getting confused as to why he's behaving the way he's behaving, and when he tries to push her in and like awaken the beast to eat her, he's like shoving her up against the crate, and there's like this delayed fake out, so she just starts like berating him, and she's just like, what are you doing? Like, you're a regular barnyard exhibit.
Really good.
She starts attacking his manhood, saying he's bad in bed, saying he's a horrible husband, just degrading him.
You got shit for brains. You're no good at making money. And finally, the creature himself just gets like annoyed and starts and eats her.
Man, it is only now occurring to me, how good would it have been if it was George C. Scott?
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
To be fair, you could say that about like
so many things.
Most things,
every movie, but especially this.
Yeah,
that is like pure, like just him, like
frustration
just getting
with the
fucking
woman.
mad. Yeah. Shut up, Billy! Just throwing her in the fucking crate. Oh my god. Anyway. But then it ends with so he cleans up the three bodies. It's three, right? It's the two guys that died accidentally, and then his wife, and then he throws the crate in the ocean or the lake, wherever he throws it. And then he's telling his buddy,
I drove out there with the remains of three human beings, two human beings and Wilma.
Yeah, that is a great line. But so he's telling his buddy, he's like, look, I cleaned it up, but you can't tell anybody because one, you would be part of the problem.
Yourself.
You would be incriminating yourself. So now you have to play chess with me whenever I want. He's like, literally, he's bullying him, and the guy because the guy tried to do a friendship breakup with him at the beginning of the film. And
he tried to do a friendship breakup. I think it seemed implied because he doesn't like that his wife comes to his party. So maybe now that the wife's gone, he will just play chess with him.
That was kind of like why I wasn't fully sold on this film, is because it felt like there was more there that was underdeveloped. At the same time, there was too much going on. So it's like, why do you have all these fires in the? Why are you cooking too much? You could just make this simpler. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's true. They definitely could have. They definitely could have leaned it and made it a little bit more focused on
It really could have just been the guy trying to kill his wife. The other,
that's true.
In my opinion, it would have worked the same exact way, because I don't think they did enough with the actual juxtaposition between the two professors to justify it.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be the longest one. It does seem, just if you're looking at pure narrative, it actually does seem to be fairly simple. It's just that it's kind of bloated in its idea before it finally gets there. Because I was having a little bit of trouble just with the length, in a sense that I wasn't sure when these two things were going to meet. And at a certain point, but before it actually does, because then it kind of works. But there is like a middle ground where you kind of feel a little disconnected. At least I did. Yeah. So
and honestly,
this one just
at,
based
at,
on
at 2 hours. this is there is a little bit of length to it. I think so people who maybe are less of a fan will actually say that, you know, it's there's a little bit of unevenness and inelegance to some of the way that this is structured. Some of that is just kind of inherent to anthology films, which are like by their nature always like starting and stopping.
Yeah. Right.
And, you know, and every once in a while, yeah, it's like if you're going to throw 40-minute one in there, yeah, you know, you really need to, you know, tighten that up, or you need to justify it in a way. And yeah, I think it's possible for sure that they could have, if there was one to lean up, the longest one seems like the most obvious candidate. Yeah. But also you can tell that it was the one that I guess they felt really passionate about. It was the one they felt they could cut the least from.
I do like a lot of the small details, like we said, that scene where they actually show the whole procedure of bringing the crate open and everything is really good. All the sequences when he fantasizes about killing his wife are very funny. Yeah,
like some of the directing sequences, it has some of the strongest ones for sure.
Yeah,
like,
I agree. Yeah.
But moving on to the last one here, they're creeping up on you. Named the bugs. The one that has the word creep in it. This one is about a hermetic, evil businessman played by a grumpy E.G. Marshall, who is essentially doing like a 1980s Howard Hughes like germaphobe antics performance as this like claustrophobic one-man show, locking himself up in this like high-tech antiseptic penthouse apartment, spending his entire days yelling at his employees over the phone, delighting in corporate takeovers, not because they make him more money, because they result in the suicide of his competitors. And he was just like, you know, like
he's stoked about it.
He's just like a cartoonishly monstrous character. If there's anyone who deserved the most EC Comics comeuppance, it's this guy.
Yeah, like one of the, like after he finds out that one of the board of directors or something, someone that I'm assuming is going to give him more power of some kind, or had a vote that he didn't want him to have, they find out that he kills himself, and he talks to the wife, I believe, and he's just like, oh great, now I don't have to fire him and things like that. Like he has, he's just
old Norman went out with a bang, didn't he?
yeah, it's just absolutely cold, and it is so evil that it becomes kind of funny. It does take that kind of full circle. It becomes
hilarious.
Oh yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
It is so evil that it's hilarious. And I was like, man, imagine if you did a version of this type of a thing with like, I don't know, like an Elon or like an Andrew Tate type of a guy. Like, I was like, there's something here. You could kind of reheat this.
It is kind of hilarious that you can just go on the internet right now and find somebody that acts exactly like this. Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah, just torturing hysterical, grieving wives, and basically wishing pain and death and misery upon like every single service person he comes into contact with. And the sort of, I guess the idea of this short is that while he's doing all of this, obviously this behavior is really horrible, and it is resulting in this manifestation of this cockroach problem that he's having. And it starts out with just, and anyone who has like a bug phobia or a cockroach phobia, this is like, there is a lot of cockroaches and hundreds of cockroaches.
And I do have issues with bugs. Like this is the only one that really I had to kind of cover my eyes during certain parts.
Yeah, this is a squirmy idea for me.
Like, it starts in a ridiculous place where he's in this high-tech penthouse and he's just like spraying like his place with a giant canister of bug spray. You know, every room and every cranny, and like his bugs are coming up in his food processor and his cereal box, and the line is they creep up on you and like all of that. But it becomes clear as the segment goes on, like, is this guy actually dealing with roaches, or is this like the sort of crazy, like paranoid punishment for his own kind of like moral rot and ugliness, or is this legitimately just a supernatural amount of roaches just like terrorizing this guy?
Well, so I kind of took it at face value because I didn't, based on how the whole film is set up, I didn't feel like I needed to see anything as like a metaphor. You know what I mean? I was gonna be, because it's also ridiculous and mystical and spooky. I was not going to be like, this is some sort of metaphor for the decay of, you know. I was just like, no, they're fucking
the wealthy
roaches,
man.
and they're no. I was like, no, this guy who's a germaphobe is dealing with his worst.
Curious, because I kind of had a similar opinion, and I think the short ends in a way where it suggests it was partially fantasy, and then it kind of has it happen
or
anyway.
That it was orchestrated against him by his employees.
Yeah. I felt like
that's
it could
the
have,
other thing.
Yeah, it could have been like a little both, like almost like a paranoia of everything, that all the people he's treated absolutely horribly in the last 20 minutes that you see it.
Yeah, kind of orchestrate, because that one guy,
dude, that guy he calls on the phone.
Yeah, the guy's laughing. He's like, "What's the problem? You got some bugs?" Like he's laughing about it.
It
like,
feels as if he knew exactly what was going to happen and just let it happen. That kind of thing. Just because he's like, fuck this guy.
Or like was a part of it. Yeah.
Well, because I'm curious what your guys' thought, but there's this, because you're talking about the like handyman who shows up, the Mr. White, because he calls his building superintendent who's on vacation on his phone. He basically says, either you get the handyman to come here immediately to resolve this bug problem, or you and your wife and kids can go to Disneyland on your welfare check next year. And Mr. White shows up, played by David Early, and he talks to him, and he's talking to him about like getting the fumigation service to come in and all of that. But David Early is like really, really hamming up this performance to the point that I started that was what first triggered me to believe that there was something more subjective happening, because he kind of looks at this black handyman, and the way he performs it sounded like he was trying to do like the Bamboozled voice and stuff.
I mean, he was 100% doing that.
I know. So that leads me to believe that it was in the perspective of this old wealthy racist dude who was looking at this guy being like, this guy's just trying to mock me and not actually trying to help me and all of this. And so that was the only thing that made me go, that's so intensely subjective of a choice to make, that the handyman, he views him in this like very kind of like racist caricature almost.
Yeah. And I like that he does it right away too. He doesn't build up to it after he's rude to him. So it's almost like... Mm-hmm.
Well, so Josh, you're thinking he's just viewing that guy as that. You don't think that because to me, I saw it and I was like, that character is
that guy is deliberately doing that to torture
deliberately
him.
doing that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see that
That's
too.
That's how I saw it. It's like he's in like I'm doing it to fuck with you, like, oh, miss it, like, well, I'm not gonna,
but get that on the record.
He thought about it.
The thing is I think he doesn't build up to that voice or performance. He's like, as soon as he starts talking to him, he's doing it. So it almost feels like he's so used to this guy that he's like, fuck you right away. Like, I'm just gonna interact with you like this.
Sure.
Yeah. So I could see. I mean, I could see both ways, because the way that I understood, like, I could understand why it could also be a more subjective thing, is how fucking insane the amount of bugs gets to a certain point. Like, it just feels so like fantasy.
Well, and then they're on his bed and he's having a heart attack, and then it flashes back out and like they're not there anymore, right? Like the whole idea is that they're not in the cereal anymore. They're not in all these places they were before, and it was like, was he just imagining? They're all in his fucking body, dude, and they're about to explode out of him in like an incredible practical effect. And again, Tom Savini gets to fucking flex across all of these with the gore effects.
Yes. Yeah, it's honestly one of the grossest things that I've seen. It looks so authentic, the way the skin pops open and the cockroaches
coming out of his neck, coming out of his brain like a bloody tumor or something. It's fucking sick.
You'll be delighted to know that I was listening to, again, friend of the show, Eli Roth, good guy. He interviewed Stephen King, and they were talking about Creepshow in that segment specifically. And there was someone who was blowing the bugs to like shoot them out, basically.
Okay.
And he was like in like a suit I can't remember the story exactly specifically, but like he's like in the bug suit and he's blowing him out with a tube. And they're like, "Are you good? Can you handle this?" He's like, "Yeah, but I have one request." And his only request was that there would be a bottle, like a baby bottle of whiskey. And every once in a while, after I'm blowing the fucking roaches up, you give me a little swig on the baby bottle of whiskey. So,
that's awesome. Just get him through it.
So he's like in this fucking bug suit for hours. And just, he's stuck there. And he's just swigging from the booze.
That's so
anyway.
That's metal as hell. Oh my God.
It is pretty fucking badass.
That is very badass. It's so many. It's ridiculous.
When movies were good.
Yes. Yep. When people just let cockroaches spill all over them.
Exactly. Back when there were no rules and regulations.
Yeah, it's like
now
when
you got the PC.
It was like Exorcist 2 with the locusts, if I'm remembering correctly.
Oh yeah, man. Jesus.
Crazy shit.
But
great ending.
Should I watch Exorcist 2? I've seen Exorcist 3. Should I watch Exorcist 2?
I think it's weird.
Everyone should watch
Exorcist
Exorcist 2.
Yeah, it's definitely not 3.
Okay.
It's not going to be 3, but I think it's weird enough to get something out of it.
It's directed by John Boorman, Mr. Excalibur and Point Blank. It's worth watching for just the insane shit that comes out of that man's brain.
Yeah, totally.
Zardoz.
Oh my God, yeah, that movie. That broke my brain for sure.
But yeah, they're creeping up on you as the last one, but we do one last follow-up where we circle back around to the wraparound story, to this epilogue, where you have Tom Savini as the garbage man throwing out the comic book in the trash can out front of Tom Atkins' house from the opening, from that Stephen King's kid was reading. He's not allowed to read anymore. And they're looking at all the deals on X-ray glasses and other various novelty items that you could buy in comic books. And they see that the redeem coupon for a voodoo doll has already been used. And where is that voodoo doll? Inside the kid's bedroom, where he is stabbing his dad, causing pain. Tom Atkins just screaming as this kid is like gleefully laughing, which again, that just captures the juvenile vibe of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You are watching bad taste, grotesque ghouls and gags of like a little vengeful kid.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And we had a blast.
And again, it turns into the comic style
absolutely.
as it's been doing, and the Reaper ends it. The creep.
That's right. The Reaper, baby. The Reaper.
As he often does, because the Reaper ends it all.
Yeah.
For everyone. All the time. Yeah. Well, that is
movie.
Yeah, that's Creepshow. We're gonna pivot to the reductive rating round here, but this was the very solid 4 for me. Again, I loved seeing two like gods of horror that I already love. One with George A. Romero, who we already know is an incredibly good at both being gruesome and also being satirical, which this film is doing in equal measure. And you also have Stephen King, who we haven't talked about, like, I don't think like a ton on this show, as like, like we've talked about some adaptations of him. We've done Christine, we've done Carrie, this kind of stuff. But like, this is peak him just in his like cocaine
Wacko
addiction
mode,
and just being like, what are these like old trashy comic books that I loved that my parents thought rotted my brain, and how could I bring that to the screen for kids 30 years later? And him and Romero, I just think, did a really great job of getting the atmosphere of it right, getting the colorfully exaggerated imagery of it right, getting the wit and the meanness of it, and serving up so much ridiculously conceived and very grisly revenge on all of these various characters who in some way or another kind of deserve it, which not quite doing it in the sort of like politically angry and more kind of like moral way that Romero would do in kind of like some of his other movies. Yeah. But, doing it nonetheless in a kind of silly and cathartic way. And despite the fact that this is a anthology film where there's a little bit of inconsistency between the quality, I had a good, on average, I had a good time with pretty much every single one of the shorts. But I think it seems pretty agreed upon here that Mr. Leslie Nielsen as the VHS obsessed Jigsaw, putting Ted Danson into a trap was definitely the strangest and kind of most interesting one. But yeah, there's a lot of great images throughout the entire thing, courtesy of Romero and courtesy of Tom Savini's effects work specifically. And obviously Creepshow ended up being a huge commercial hit, so much so that it made it into a TV show that ran for half the 80s, and it sparked so many different kinds of. It got a sequel.
There's still Creepshow related things going on, right?
For sure, yeah. There's a creep. I think Shudder does a Creepshow TV show still right now, and obviously, so many anthology horror films in the 80s and 90s, kind of owe their existence to the fact that they could pitch. We're sort of like Creepshow, like Tales from the Hood. That's the more politically angry version of Creepshow, and it's
Great
very
movie.
good as well. People should check that one out.
Yeah.
We've covered that one as well. Body Bags is quite silly. That's John Carpenter and Tobe Hooper kind of taking a stab at that, and
which I also watched recently and loved.
Yeah, that's a good one. The opening gas station one by Carpenter in particular is really good.
Really
the
good.
Best one.
Yeah.
The best one.
I think so too, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also wanted to give a brief shout out because I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but Stephen King and George Romero collaborated one other time in the 90s on something called The Dark Half. And I just happened to blind watch this recently on a print because we had one play here. And it's one of King's meta novels where it's a story about a successful horror author, but it's such a weird one because it's he's his Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type story where Timothy Hutton is playing him in a dual role where he's half the normal sensitive domestic husband writer, and then the other half is his alter ego pen name where he writes all of his misogynistic crime pulp bestsellers. And King obviously had to publish under a pseudonym for a while too, Richard Bachman. And so the pen name character is basically the serial killing Elvis impersonator in a leather jacket, just tormenting the more sensitive pussy version of Stephen King. And it's kind of a messy and more boring version of In the Mouth of Madness. It's a little bit too long. But Romero goes pretty crazy with some of the imagery, and there's a part in it where he goes full zombie movie gory sensibility, but he mixes that with The Birds. And I won't say anything else about it from there, but if you want to see more Romero and King, that's the only other thing I've seen where these two guys' sensibilities kind of so merged and clashed up against one another. And yeah, it was a delight seeing it here. So 4 for me.
Yeah, I think I'm in the strong 3 territory. I still think it's great, and I don't dislike any of the shorts by any means. I just like them to various degrees, I suppose. But like I said, my favorite is Something to Tide You Over. I think it has a perfect blend of this it has the dark humor, but there's something about it that as it goes, it gets just more and more sadistic because it really does kind of become a torture short in a way. So that one was definitely my favorite. And I liked also watching, excuse me. I liked also watching Leslie Nielsen, kind of play a little bit of his, what he would do when he does parody, because he's still enjoying himself. He's having fun while he's doing it. But Ted Danson is in a very serious situation. So I liked their juxtaposition there of their contrast of their performances. So that one is my favorite. But every single one of these has George Romero's touch, and some of the images in these are great.
Stephen King as a grass alien blowing his head off, great image.
Oh yeah, and Savini, the mix of Romero and Savini is just fucking flawless. Anytime, it's Savini's time to shine with these kills. It's amazing, and just the way that Romero uses the camera, it just accents it. So yeah, I have a great deal of fun with it. I just don't know if I love every single short. So I'm going to keep the strong 3. But I also love the transitions too, those how it goes in and out of the comic book style. And it's very brief because they want to move on to the next short, but they have kind of a title card and individual credits in that same style before the short begins. And it's just a great way to kind of transition those. So yeah, strong 3.
Yeah, for you, Rob.
Well, I am not a rater unless it's a 5.
Wow.
Give it the heart.
Much to the chagrin of our mutual friend Sean Glynis. But I would say if I were to have to rate, I would say somewhere between the 3.5 and the 4. I really enjoyed it. It was just a great time at the movies. I wish I watched it younger. I was really
Me too,
horror
actually.
film. I was really horror film phobic growing up. And
I could see why
bums me
80s
out.
kids are like obsessed with this. Like if I had seen
Yeah.
this when I was like a shithead
come
10-year-old,
on.
I would have been like, this is the greatest movie that's ever been made.
sure.
Well, think of I don't know what your personal like regular Halloween watches are, but I watch so much garbage that I'm like, it's Halloween. I gotta watch the Disney Channel original Halloween Town once a year. And I watch it, and every time I watch it, I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
I still have to do it. It's like this thing
'cause you
where
grew up
like
on it.
it'll fire off some neuron in my brain that it's like, you'll be happy for 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think I did
And
that
I'm not,
last.
but like I think
There you have
will,
it. Creepshow better than Halloween Town.
Yeah,
It
I
is
think I did
better. Creepshow is a better film than Halloween Town. You have me on the record saying that.
I think I did the Disney Halloween watches last year.
What have I watched more, and what will I watch more, Josh Lewis? Is Halloween Town.
Okay.
It's I'll be honest. I will probably watch. By the time I die, I will have watched Halloween Town way more than I have watched Creepshow. It's not even close.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for Creepshow here. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about 3 more spooky tales, but 1960s and in Italy. We're going to be talking about Black Sabbath. Stick around. All right, we are back, and we are talking Black Sabbath, the 1963 anthology horror film written and directed by Mario Bava, co-written by Marcello Fondato and Alberto Bevelka, and starring Boris Karloff, Mark Damon, Michelle Mercier, among many others throughout the various shorts here. I believe this is actually our 5th time talking about the legendary Italian horror director and cinematographer Mario Bava. It's just kind of been a little while, I think.
He's so good, though. One of my favorites, definitely.
He is one of the greatest.
Yeah.
Even prior to directors like Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci and Sergio Martino was like establishing the sort of like elegantly crafted sort of gruesomeness and artificial lights and sort of painterly visual language of giallo and supernatural horror in Italy, in some cases like a full decade before those guys, let alone like American filmmakers who would be eventually inspired by them. So like we've talked about how ridiculously ahead of his time Bava was many times on this show on Black Sunday.
Yep.
Which was very black and white, sort of like gothic cobweb castle horror film, very much in the spirit of Edgar Allan Poe, and actually came out the same year as Corman and Price's House of Usher, resulting in Barbara Steele being in the Iron Maiden for Corman's Pit and The Pendulum a year later. So he was coming up with that around the same time that those would become huge hits and would define both of those filmmakers' career. He also did Bay of Blood, which is honestly like the closest thing to a camp slasher that had been made in the year 1971 when it came out. almost a decade before the slasher would like actually, you know, be the thing that it was. And it has some insane kills in it. And then my personal favorite, and I think Jamie's too, Blood and Black Lace.
Yeah, me too.
Which is just like the perfect, like decadent, sadistic, like dollhouse material for him, where he was doing a movie about like rich fashion designers and models just getting brutally killed and swallowed by like this corrupt industry they've surrounded themselves in. But it's also just an excuse because you're in a fashion house. So it's like colors and erotic murder set pieces. And, you know, so alongside Suspiria and The Beyond, I put like Blood and Black Lace up there as like the Italian horror film for me. So I'm very excited to be talking about Mario Bava again. And this is one of the ones that I feel like ends up, you know, pretty frequently kind of going under discussed in his filmography. Like maybe not so much as something like Shock, which we've also covered on the show, and
very good,
you know, which, you know, is maybe more underrated than this. But in terms of like horror anthology films, this is like really like one of the strongest ones that's out there, and it came about after the success of Black Sunday and Corman and Price's Poe films. Because it's actually by the same company who did those we talked about last week, American International Pictures.
That makes so much sense. That makes the most sense.
They were looking to pick up some Italian horror, and they were like, look, we just made this Corman and Price stuff, and Bava was interested in kind of doing like a Dead of Night or sort of like Qui-Gon style. Because like, you know, and anthology horror stories had existed, you know, since the 1940s and 50s and stuff like that. So they had been out there. But for him specifically, he was like, I want to do these old school horror stories, and I also want to have a kind of diversity of sort of history and kind of time period. So that's why his... You know, he only did 3, but they really do range from everything from like this like modern stalker thriller to old school gothic like vampire movie, you know, to more, you know, basically like more classic ghost story, but done in like what would become the iconic like surrealist Italian style of it too. Yes, and then obviously also having Boris Karloff as the wraparound kind of crypt keeper character, introducing and contextualizing all of this. Yeah,
there's specific things that you see, especially the way he uses lighting, that you see in his future films throughout, like especially Blood and Black Lace, with the slow flashing light where something can appear in the darkness at any moment and disappear. Like it's just it's really cool to see him in every single short use kind of a different style that he's known for.
Oh yeah,
it's incredible.
I mean, clearly it's just a showcase for him as like a meticulous formalist. He was like, how can I, you know, do different sets and different colors, and you know, and how can I really play with that? And I will say up front, right at the beginning, if anyone hasn't seen this film, please, for the love of God, watch the Italian version.
Yes, yeah. There's a bunch
both
of stuff
versions
cut out
are
in the American, I believe.
Yeah, both versions are out there in the world. There's the original Italian version. There's the American International Pictures version. Because as much as they helped get this movie made, they also were like, well, this is too weird and Italian for American audiences in 1963. They trim out some of the violence. They rearrange the stories, which is, I think, one of the weirdest decisions that they make.
What is the arrangement? What is the arrangement for the?
They start with the drip, the water first.
The drops of water.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Whereas I think, and then I think they do. I'd have to double check because I haven't watched the American one.
They end on the Wordulak.
I think so. I think they wait for the longest one for the end. And what I like about this is that it starts out in the very sort of like low key kind of grounded way.
Yeah.
Then it throws in some supernatural elements, and then it gets fucking crazy.
And
it actually has a very gradual build between the three of them.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that it's both. It's like you have a woman that's kind of paranoid about what's going on around her in the first one in an enclosed space, and in the second one you have the more the fantasy elements and more of the supernatural, and then you kind of fuse those together for the final one with the drop of water. So I think it works really, really well that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and he clearly deliberately did it that way. And also, this dude's a cinematographer, so like visual and color is like his specialty. And they changed the color timing in the American version and changed the music, and like they did all kinds of stuff.
That would just destroy his direction. That's crazy.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of reasons not to watch the American one, which they felt was more palatable and less weird in Italian. And I don't know why you watch a Mario Bava film if you don't want it to be weird in Italian.
Yeah.
It's just my
agreed.
my take on it. So
it's because they fucking hate us. They fucking hate us.
Yes, but
they all think we're whacking people. I'm saying this like I'm an Italian, but I'm not. But I can speak for them. Who gives a shit what they have to say? Anyway,
we probably won't get any.
Yes, but this one. The wraparound story here is the god Boris Karloff, Mr. Frankenstein himself, perfect for introducing you to some spooky Halloween tales. And he is himself in this like vibrantly colored like artificial soundstage, blue background, like pink rocks, and he's just being like, allow me to introduce 3 brief tales of terror and the supernatural. And I love that he's like directly acknowledging the audience in this like I hope you didn't come to this theater like alone. You know, you will, there are specters and vampires everywhere. There might even be one sitting next to you because they go to the movies too. And I like this, how it immediately draws your attention to the artificiality and also the love of movies and storytelling and kind of all of this. Like the movie immediately knows like exactly what you're here for. And the first one is the story called The Telephone. It is this very creepy little stalker thriller with an ominous sort of like telephone call, essentially between a French call girl named Rosie, played by Michelle Mercier, who I've actually only ever seen in a like cartoonishly bleak spaghetti western called Cemetery Without Crosses, but she's pretty good in that. And she's essentially all alone in her apartment, and she has this ominous caller who wants to kill her, which is, something that should probably sound familiar to most horror fans. But not only does this predate Scream, but it also predates When a Stranger Calls and Black Christmas, which are the movies that most people cite as inspirations for Scream.
Yeah, and it's not even, what's wild, it's not even the idea of just this kind of, this anonymous caller that keeps creeping you out, but
she knows who it is.
Yeah, and
she thinks she knows who it is.
And the scares, the details of him going like, "Oh, you look beautiful tonight." Like the whole like, "I'm watching you currently, presently, right now. I can
see what you're doing right now."
Yeah.
Like
and then so in my notes, I wrote down, "That's just how Italians flirt." That's just what they do. That's just they're very
courting ritual.
People.
Exactly.
It's fine. It's normal.
That was what Craven was trying to do with the Drew Barrymore section of Scream. This is just teenage courting ritual.
That's what they do.
Yeah, but I love like the patience and mood of this one, which feels like part sort of like Hitchcock murder scheme movie, part like early giallo woman driven into madness kind of movie. Because again, this is like before what most people they would actually start calling things giallos and have giallo movies. It's kind of so and Bava is just so good at wringing tension out of this room. Like it's just like this whole short is the bedroom and a phone and pure style, great sound and editing. It's like very tautly, sharply kind of constructed of just like it's scored to the telephone rings and her ticking analog clock and the camera just like nervously dollying and panning away its round this like decadent apartment while she's changing into her nightgown and pouring herself a drink and answering these dead air calls on her blood red rotary phone. Like it's such striking imagery.
Yeah, I love how he sucks out.
This was so clearly my favorite one. Like it started off, I was like, "There's no way I like the other ones."
Oh, nice. Mine's actually The Drop of Water. That's my favorite.
Well, I think that is the best directed one, but like as a whole, like the thing that got me the most, because like when I watch horror movies and stuff like that, I actively want to be scared and thrilled. And it rarely happens, you know?
This one kind of freaked you out a little bit?
It didn't necessarily, but it did give me that, like, peak of, like, how is this one going to end? Like, I was just like, oh, who is on the phone? Like, is something going to creep up? Like, I was wondering what the next step would be. Whereas with the other ones, I kind of knew how it was going to end.
Sure. Yeah. I could see that because this does have a little bit of anticipation of like whether or not this is, you know, maybe a spirit of some kind or just a murderer, or if it's connected to her past. And eventually that's revealed, of course. But yeah, initially it does have a very like anonymous feeling to it where you're really not quite sure where this is going to lead. You just know you're in a horror story.
Yeah, well, I do like some of the lines, too, of her being like, you know, like, who is this? Who's on the other end? And he's like, you'll only know, like, right before you die. You know, like, making clear that he means her, like, imminent bodily harm. And also the fact that she gets freaked out and her immediate, you know, thought is, okay, I got to go into my apartment, go around, turn all the lights on. And then the next call is, you did well turning all the lights on. I want to see you die. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of great, like, just almost like it's not quite cat and mouse suspense, but it's like one of those things where the logic of it builds in a really kind of satisfying and kind of tense and creepy way like that. And, you know, and she does begin to really like sweat and be driven into paranoid madness, kind of waiting for her own demise, and the uncertainty of, you know, it even if it's not, it starts taking on this kind of supernatural and ghostly taunting quality to it just on the way that she's being spoken to. And, you know, then you start throwing in those sick like crank zooms on like piercing eyes peering on her through the blinds, and the footsteps outside, someone sliding a newspaper clipping under the door of her escaped former pimp named Frank, who she turned in and testified against. She's like, oh my God, he's escaped. He's going to come kill me, which triggers the sort of the second half of the short where she calls a strange lover of hers named Mary, and she calls her for comfort. She's begging for her, and it's actually the only time the short cuts away from the perspective of her apartment is to cut to Mary answering her phone. And I like that at this point your brain is actually trained to kind of feel like a phone ringing is just an ominous thing, even though it's a girl calling another girl that she, you know, is friends with. And that is shortly followed by the reason it's ominous is because it's revealed that fucking Mary is the person on the other end of the phone doing the voice impersonation of
and the only reason why she's doing it is just some petty bullshit. She just, because apparently Rosie told Mary she never wanted to see her again. So Mary's like, oh, I know how I'll get her to talk to me again.
It's a prank, bro.
She's a prankster. She's the god of Halloween, dude.
Yeah. And
she's just doing bits.
And in the details too, isn't it also like she never technically finds out because of she gets like sleeping pilled, and then the actual Frank does come in and end up strangling Mary. And
but after Mary is like because you think when this is happening, you think, oh, I guess so Mary is the one who wants to kill Rosie and just wanted to give herself an in. But no, Mary just wanted to hang. And then she's writing a fucking letter to be like, look, it was fucked up what I did, but I missed you. And after she tranquilized fucking Rosie, she gives her a sedative. She knocks her out and then is writing a letter. She's like, but look, see, we were hanging out. It was great.
Yeah.
So nothing's wrong.
Yeah, well, even though the actual scene where they hang out, the actual scene where they hang out is quite tense too, because from our perspective, we just know her as the girl that's like behind all of this torment she's been experiencing.
We think she's going to kill her. Like we think she's the killer.
Yeah, like I like that sequence where Mary is just now like walking around her room, and it has some creep factor to it because she thinks she's safe, and we're like, you're not safe. Look at her black leather gloves. That's exactly what a fucking Italian killer would fucking wear.
Got the black leather gloves. She pulls out the knife. And then puts it under the pillow for Rosie and is like, you never know. And you're like, and I love... he's going to kill you with the knife.
Like one of Bava's signature things too, just like in Blood and Black Lace, is how sensually he films stuff like that. He's like, look at the gloves, look at the knife. He films it the same way like another filmmaker would film the furniture and the fabrics in the room and the beautiful Italian women. But he's like, no, look at these gloves, look at this knife, and he's instilling those thoughts in your brain. You're like fending off psychic war from this insane Italian man watching his movies. But yeah, you're right. It has this great little ironic twist ending to it where, Mary sedates her with tea, writes this confession letter explaining that she was the one scaring her for, causing her so much pain. I just wanted to see you again. I wanted you to call me again, And the great twist of it is that Frank actually does escape, does burst into the room, and thinking he's killing Rosie, he strangles Mary to death. And the bit with the knife is that, because like he's strangling Mary to death, like with a scarf, which is another fucking Bava touch, drenched in moonlight. And Rosie wakes up hearing like Mary gasping for air, and she's fucking prepared with the knife because of Mary, because Mary put it under her pillow as part of, so Mary's prank actually left her prepared for this guy to break into her place. She probably would have been killed. And as a result of Mary's prank, she got the upper hand and stabbed him instead. And now there's just a pile of corpses in her bedroom.
And the camera just does what it's been doing the whole time, where it slowly pans over everything. But now it's just the aftermath and all the destruction instead of like leading you to something. You're just left with the death. It's great. Great short. It is good. Great short. Yep. That's definitely
my favorite for sure.
Hell yeah. Nice. The one that followed it is one called the Wurdulak, which is Slavic for vampire, and this is like the Crate, the longest one and the most sort of ambitious one of the bunch. Which it does kind of make sense to put in the middle one, because you want to get people's attention fast, and you also want to kind of like end on like a crazy high note, and it does a good job of putting this one in its right spot. Yeah. But also this one being the longest one, also I was surprised that it makes it tonally a little bit more of like a sad kind of slow burn, like folk horror kind of movie. But I actually think that it's still pretty lean and to the point, and I almost wish that this was like a movie that he had just made. Like this could have been a whole feature, I thought, in how well done it is. It's loosely based on the Gothic novella called The Family of the Wurdulak by the Russian author Alexei Tolstoy. And this is definitely going for more of an Edgar Allan Poe sort of like Gothic Baroque sort of like family tragedy, where it's like, they're torn apart by this like supernatural mysticism. And it even actually brings Mark Damon back, who we just talked about last week, who starred alongside Vincent Price in House of Usher, to play the lead character here, Count Vladimir, who rides on horseback through like 1800s Serbia, his black cape flowing as he pulls up to a river where he finds the corpse of a headless horseman with a dagger sticking out of him. It's like it's real European castle location work that's pretty amazing. This is like crazy colored skies right out of a painting.
The look of this one is I don't know if it's I would probably tie it in the sense of just the aesthetic of it with the drop of water and this one, but like you said, the red and purple skies is incredible. The fog, the ancient ruins that he goes through over and over again. Yeah, the fog over the landscapes almost makes it look like a watercolor painting or something like that. It's amazing.
So this one, I loved all the exteriors, not like the interiors.
You're like, crazy about the more soundstagey stuff.
I mean, when you use the word soundstage, I have no problem with that. I just didn't like the direction they took it into, which is like kind of a cottagey. Like I wanted to be more like a Gothic.
Sure,
castle.
I could see that. It is kind of like a tavern or a hotel.
But then when you get in the woods, that is pure Halloween sheen. You got the fucking branches all over. You got the fog rolling in, and then it's kind of weird because it feels like this short doesn't really exist in real time, because every once in a while it will cut to outside of like the immediate vicinity, and like you got a horse in daylight trudging through the snow, For no reason, they just show that, and then it cuts back to the woods, and it's at the same time that it was originally at, like, the middle of the night, with the fog rolling in. It's like, why'd you cut to that horse in the snow? It's very strange.
Yeah, just trying to mix some of the real location work with the like very artificial sort of studio stuff. I guess that they were shooting because the old Hollywood studio stuff. You could tell even getting the chance to cast like Boris Karloff in this one, because Karloff actually is the main, one of the main characters in this one as well. You can tell that Bava was stoked. Like when he was getting to do the foggy farmhouse stuff, he was like, "This is like my Universal Monsters thing, man. This is like when Frankenstein goes out into the forest, or when the Wolfman is like going around town killing people." He was like, "This is like my version of finally getting to do that," because Vladimir, it turns out, pulls up to this farmhouse looking for shelter. And it turns out to be, the sort of like family home of a man named Gorka and his whole family, his daughter, his sons, their wives, children, kind of like everything. And it turns out that Gorka, the patriarch of the family, has been missing for 5 days. He's gone hunting. He was hunting a Turkish criminal who they all kind of suspect is actually a bloodthirsty vampire, which is the body he presumably found with the father's dagger in it. 'Cause they were like, if you found a decapitated body with a dagger in the heart, that was probably our dad killing a vampire. But it's also worth noting that Gorka, Boris Karloff, he also instructed them that if I don't come back in 5 days, don't let me in, because I will be a Verderlock, And this does have an interesting twist, I thought, on the vampire lore, where it's like they're simply like basically bloodthirsty corpses, like zombies, and it's a very romantic character, because the more they say, the more they love, the more they long to kill. Yeah, which is why they need to be staked in the heart.
Yeah, it's like they want their loved ones to just continue the everlasting life, I guess, with them. So there's that kind of dark quality to it. It's not just used
so
as
it's like
feeding.
It's that classic like gothic romance quality, but like what if like love was like this curse, and and that's why when the passions and emotions overwhelm the survivalist elements of this, it kind of made sense to me. Whereas maybe in another version you might be annoyed by that.
No, but then so it's like that. I mean, usually it's like, what if we did this and we had like eternal love forever? But with this, it's like, what if we had a whole family of fucking vampires and we could all chill and be and have a loving, nice family? Like I kind of was like, that sounds nice. But at the end of this one, I was like, that sounds chill. Having a whole fucking vampire family. What's wrong with that?
Sitcom. That's a sitcom waiting to happen.
Yeah, no. So literally, I was like, because I'm so fucked up these days that like I fantasize about being Dracula. So I was like, what's wrong with that? I was like, this sounds awesome.
Sick. Yeah.
I would love to be Dracula.
Me up.
I would love to be
hanging
Dracula.
Hanging out with Boris Karloff, my dad.
But you know what would even be better is if you're Dracula with a family, with a fucking wife and a kid and your boys. Like what? Come on.
Hey, Vladimir agrees with you. So I mean,
he does ultimately. That is the emotional trajectory of this story. Even though the atmosphere screams horror, he's ultimately like, I kind of choose this family. I choose being in love.
Yeah, it's about chosen family.
That's right. But man, the atmosphere is so fucking good. Like Bava directs the hell out of that whole segment of like. The clock striking midnight on the final day, while like the howling wind is outside and this hooded figure is crossing like through mud, through the rickety bridge, like over the swamp, and it's revealed then that it's Gorka and it's Karloff, and this short takes on almost like a body snatchers sort of like zombie dynamic where they don't know who's been turned and they kind of refuse to believe whether they've been turned due to their love for the person, even though Karloff is like he looks half dead.
Yeah.
He's wrinkly, he's gray. He's got a giant knife wound in his fucking chest, and the dogs are all howling at him, and he literally makes one of his kids
they know
shoot
what
the
to
dog.
look for. Like they are like aware he very well might come back as a vampire.
He literally said, if it's been 5 days, don't let me in.
It's been 5 days. He comes back and he's all fucked up looking. They're like, "Hey, Pops," and he's like, "Hello." And they're like, "Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong here."
He's like ominously holding his grandson Ivan seconds before ripping the Turkish vampire's decapitated head like out of a sack and being like, "Look at this."
They're like, "Cool."
There's a real
that's awesome, dude.
Take him outside after dark. That's normal. Yeah, go ride with Grandpa at 2 a.m.
There's a real like strength the way that they present him too. Like it's kind of ominous, like you were saying, that great dark silhouetted shot of him going across the bridge. But the closer he gets to the house, they have this other shot where he's approaching, where it's right behind him, and it kind of does almost like a Steadicam effect, where it's very still but still following him and tracking him. And it just feels like there's this powerful presence that's kind of coming up to the house. It's really well directed. I loved that whole reveal sequence. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like the sequence when he starts fucking wilding out too. It's just like everyone in the house goes to sleep and he's still awake, and it's just like dollying and panning around while Vlad is just like twisting and turning, and Boris Karloff is just nocturnally stalking like each one of them around the house. And then he walks up to Vlad's bed, and there's this great sort of like dolly where the camera pushes in on Vlad sleeping and, starting and it loses sight of Boris Karloff looking over him, like close enough to actually like grab and touch him. And Vlad wakes up in like a startled panic that there's something in the room with him, and the camera pulls away all in one shot. And Boris Karloff's not there anymore. Yeah. And now he's outside the window staring in, like glowing purple. And, like just suddenly he's like, oh my God, there he is.
Just slowly leaves, still staring too. It's great.
Well, yeah, and then that's when he bites like Pietro's neck, and that's when he kidnaps the kid on horseback in that like incredible like fake horse rig in front of like the moving shrubbery and lighting and everything, which we actually end up seeing revealed in the final shot of the film. Right. Yeah. But this is where it's actually used in the film. So it's awesome that like it has such an intensity to the mood that you don't realize that that's what that shot is, that it kind of comes back at the end, and it's great. But there's so many beautiful images in this. My favorite is that crazy shot from the vantage point of the roof of the farmhouse, where the one son, Giorgio, comes back carrying his son Ivan's corpse in the blue moonlight. And it's like in front of this like giant like claw-like tree, and the wife is coming out and like hysterically crying over their kid, and you're just watching from like the rooftop like window basically. And that's when they are like, yeah, sorry, she's so upset about it, she won't actually let them stake the kid in the heart. So of course they bury him out back, and he comes back to life, and they repeat that shot again, but it's the kid outside being like, mama, as he's getting closer and closer. And man, like it's just like that whole thing where a kid is coming back to life, and the mom can't handle it, and she fucking like kills her husband.
Yeah, just to get to
Ivan
him.
is on the kid is like banging on the door, his knees like bowing in front of it. Like it's so creepy. Like Bava is good with like kid horror the few times he deploys it. I was thinking of that shot in Shock, that transformation shot where the kid is running down the hallway and then turns into the like adult man with claws and stuff. Like this
so
reminded me of that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally get that. And then I think when she opens the door too, this is when she gets kidnapped.
It's Karloff, baby.
Yeah, he's ready to go, and he takes her to these ancient ruins that they keep going back to that I was talking about earlier, which just look
are
great.
So beautiful.
Yeah,
I think they look amazing.
At a certain point, it looks like they have one massive one that it's kind of like a composition between two real shots and maybe something that's like like a matte painting in the middle, but it's beautiful.
I think it's meant to be this abandoned like monastery or something like that they end up going to.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite.
It's very
locations.
vague what it is, but it's pure Halloween sheen.
Yes,
pure Halloween sheen.
it belongs.
Well, yeah, and it's there that she's like where the one daughter remaining who's been, you know, slowly like kind of like falling in love with Vlad over the course of the short, you know, she gets swallowed by her cursed family, which is like classic Poe stuff, and it's done in these like POV shots of them, you know, being platformed towards her on the camera in like this deep green lighting as each one just gets closer and closer and, you know, welcoming her in. And, you know, then she appears fine as she, you know, as she's telling Vlad to, you know, who comes back to the house, like, you know, go away, like run before, you know, like, you know, before something goes wrong here. And he's just like, you know, he's like, no, I'm going to rescue you. And, you know, he confesses his love, his desire to, he cannot live without her. Mm-hmm. And as a result, she is like, yeah, she goes in for a kiss. And, you know,
the whole family
as we
watches.
Kind of learned with this version of the vampire, it's like, yeah, you know, this is how you are going to maintain your love. And it turns this like romantic moment into this kind of gruesomely kind of ironic moment. But it's done in like that zoom on her being like, kiss me, and the spotlight on her eyes, like followed by all the zombie heads like in the windows, watching them and stuff. It's like this,
our family's coming together, yay.
Yeah, it's like this trance like ritual romantic thing. It's very, very well done.
Yeah. And in classic Halloween spooky fashion, just the last shot being a road taken over by the fog. It's just great.
Yep.
Good touch, Bava.
Yeah, so like these are all incredibly strong, and the very and that was the longest one. That's like you know, this is a 90-minute. You know, this one is only 3 shorts, and they all kind of hit. I do think this is more consistent than Creepshow overall, because I really do like all 3 of them a lot.
Yeah, me too.
But this last one, The Drop of Water, is the shortest one. It's 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And he just goes pedal to the metal on this one.
Like
basically right from the start. Like it is the most
he's going so hard directing.
Yeah.
And this is like the most like overtly ghostly, like reanimated corpse story that he's telling. It's the closest to like straight up like Halloween haunted house kind of mood.
Yeah.
And also, in my opinion, the closest to the 3 in terms of having that like EC Comics, just like bizarre, deserved, like ironic revenge grimness to it. Mm-hmm. Where, you know, and also being just such an exercise in exaggerated style choices. Like this is, you know, Rob was talking about in the last one, where's the Gothic mansion? Here's the Gothic mansion. You know, here's the crazy psychedelic, like abstract Argento-ish, like dreamscape shit. You know, it's just, this is definitely like the leanest and most insane one of the 3.
Sure, but you know what's interesting about this film is it's really quiet, and in the sense that it reminded me, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Twilight Zone, but
not that familiar. I know you know what it is. And
do you know that? Do you know the episode The Invaders?
What's the story briefly?
It's like one of the considered one of the best ones. It's very silent. It's just this like lady. It's kind of like the Turin Horse for a sci-fi horror film. It's just this lady in like her old house, and like alien invaders are like crawling around her place, and it's almost silent.
Yeah, are these the little guys with like the little like spinning things on their heads and stuff? I think I've seen this.
Yes, and the Drop of Water kind of reminded me of that in terms of its tone and its pace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like locked in with this woman.
You're just like, locked in, and there's not really a story there. Like you understand that you're in this haunted house, and but like you don't really know who the owner of the house is, why it's haunted, why she's haunting her. Like, it's not really clear.
Well, we know why she's haunting her. Because she stole the ring.
Well, because she took the ring.
Yeah,
but but even then, that felt like it was kind of.
It's a simple premise.
Like before
it's just
took the ring, though, it already felt like it was haunted.
Oh, for sure.
That's true.
The moment you look at that,
the vibes were there.
The vibes were there. So, like, yeah, that gave us the reason. But, like, to me, watching this, all I could think of, because this will, while it wasn't necessarily my capital F favorite, it's certainly the one I will be thinking about the most, and it's certainly the one that is like directing point of view the strongest. Like,
I was going to say, if you go to an Italian horror film looking for the lurid colors and the lavish production design, this is the one you're looking for. Yeah. If you want all the expressionism and you want all of the,
oh my God, it looks so good. And to me, and maybe this sounds disrespectful to say, but I mean it. Like it would be the perfect thing to have on in the background of like a Halloween party. Like that's the vibe
for sure.
of it, because you don't really need to know what the story is going on. It is to really soak up the energy in the vibe.
No, you can. This is simple. You can basically get the gist of this. But the thing that I would say is that there is so much like detail and texture to the way that he does film the logistics of it that I still like some of the sounds and some of the lighting choices, some of the.
100%.
Like if you're not paying close attention, you'll miss the dolls, and the dolls are fucking terrifying. It's one of those things where, this one is, for anyone who hasn't seen it, this one moves it into the sort of like early 20th century. I think it's in London, and it picks up with this nurse named Helen, played by Jacqueline Perrot, who is basically just like up really late at home on a stormy night in what is an apartment that Dario Argento lives in.
Yes.
With like surreal color lighting leaking in from her windows and her gramophone slowly fizzling out, and she's answering a house call from the maid of an elderly woman who has suddenly died in the night, and it can't wait until morning. The body needs to be handled. And so she basically pulls up to this crazy cat lady gothic mansion. And it's this incredible, like decadent, decrepit production design, like armored knights covered in dust, just cobwebs and candlelight and creepy dolls lying everywhere. And my favorite detail is the corpse itself, which is making this hideous frozen face. It's an incredible dummy. I
saw the face, and I was like, "This fucking Klaus Kinski looking motherfucker." Kind of looks like Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it kind of does. You could put this corpse as a character into the Great Silence, and I wouldn't blink an eye. Just put it in the snow somewhere. But it turns out that this maid kind of reveals that this old woman kind of died doing one of her trance-like seances, and her spirit or her soul might be inhabiting this weird like limbo where she's not quite dead, or maybe a spirit made its way into her body, and which is why the atmosphere is all fucked. And there's this this whole thing is scored to like the thunderstorm outside and like cats meowing and incredible insert shots and sort of like montage as she's like observing this body, looking at the bed that it's on, freaked out by it and feeling like it's like watching her, but still tempted to steal the shiny sapphire ring and like prying it off of her lifeless finger, which triggers the series of events where like she knocks the glass over, which drips the titular water, which she's going to hear through the rest of the short. This fly starts buzzing around her, and the cut on her gasp as she notices that the woman's face like returns back to the horrible expression after she like closed the eyes to like make it look more peaceful and stuff like that. Like it's so well directed into being like, this is a short of a woman finds a creepy body, steals something from it, and then the corpse gets revenge on her. But like the absolute power of Bava's mood that he gets is like it's incredible.
Yeah, because he really takes his time before it finally kind of crescendos into it, like an all-out ghost attack, like a spirit attack, basically. And what I love is that the lighting that he does, he sets it up in the introduction scene where it's just her kind of in the storm, and it's introducing her in her apartment and everything. And it's the same kind of fading light in and out that they do in Blood and Black Lace. And he doesn't use it again until this scene where she starts to get, the haunting occurs. And it's the same kind of trick where it's slowly fading in and out, and then all of a sudden you see a figure, it disappears, it reappears. It's a great technique, and it's
hand
so
coming around the door frame or something.
Yeah, those are terrifying. Like he'll just do something where it's just two hands slowly creeping across a door frame, and the only reason it's terrifying is because of the scene he put right before it, where she rises up and starts to slowly, finally move towards her and things like that. So it's just he knows what to kind of set up so that something as simple as creeping hands is kind of a terrifying image. It's brilliant pacing. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, and like all like the best Italian horror, like it's about duration, and it is about like really sitting there in the terrified inevitability of kind of what's coming towards her in this like malevolent spirit. Because part of this is like, is it her psyche in collapse from fear of her own guilt? Is it like physically manifesting somehow in this sort of expressionist imagery we're seeing? Is this supernatural vengeance of some kind? But the way that he turns that ambiguity into like what is essentially one of the set pieces that would make Argento famous. Like this is not that different than like when she's wandering the halls of the Academy in Suspiria, and like doors are turning colors, and she's going into a room, and like suddenly it's a room filled with traps and shit. Like this has that kind of energy where it's like slowly walking through a neon lit hall, hearing creaky doors or footsteps in this like waking nightmare dreamscape world, essentially, in terms of just pure color and design. And then to get you with that level of anticipation, but then also hit you with the actual shocks when they hit, like the corpse rising in the bed.
Oof,
or my favorite, the crazy crank zoom on her in the rocking chair holding her cat.
Oh yeah,
and just rock.
Yeah,
and then
the amount of cats. There are so many cats just walking through the frame.
I don't know how to explain it. Cats have Halloween energy
Definitely.
a little bit,
100%. 100%. I mean, the black cat is a classic. And then, but there are cats like walking through the entire short, and it's great.
Yeah.
It just it gives you the sense that one, it's Halloween, baby, but two, this is a crazy psycho lady who would crush her. She's got nothing else other than cats.
And that face change too that we get on the lead here is just incredible. That we get on Helen by the end. Just that it's like come full circle. The fear has taken her over a little bit, or the spirit did. We don't know. I guess it's kind of ambiguous, but. It's just that it's such a terrifying face, and I love how often Bava zooms into it, and he's just like, "Look at what I've made! Isn't this horrifying looking?"
Well, yeah, when it's just snarling at her and like floating towards her, ready to strangle her, like it's very freaky. But my favorite image is when her hands reach out to strangle her, and it is the full like actual. Sort of like creepy corpse woman doing it. But then when it cuts to the reverse shot, it's her own hands on her neck, and she's strangling herself to death.
Right.
And obviously the sort of like grimly ironic ending of the whole thing is that the concierge woman, who calls the cops to come in and kind of take a look at the scenario and tells them what happened. They notice that there's a bruise on her ring finger, but there's no ring, and it's implying that the concierge is now the one who took it off her body, and now she hears flies, and now she hears the dripping water in the apartment that was driving her crazy during those sequences where she was, going from room to room and, doing the sort of like Suspiria or Inferno sort of apartment sequences. And then zoom in on the nurse's face now horribly staring at her. It's like one of the earlier examples I've seen of one of those like cyclical, like curse horror stories, like The Ring, or what would become like the internet, or, kind of like curse horror stories. It's very cool.
And then I think
it's a great way to wrap it up. Just like 20 minutes straight of just like, again, this is before Argento would like make this as big as it is, but like doing like a Suspiria set piece. Like again, like how many years is this before? Like almost 15 years before?
That's
like
crazy.
Bava's fucking crazy.
Yeah, he was unbelievably talented. Just a genius.
Yeah.
They knew how to make movies, those Italians.
Yeah,
they did,
and then they show you how they made them. Just in this.
Well, that's just it,
here.
and that's what he wanted. And he wanted you to know. He wanted you to know how good he was by circling around to the wraparound segment where it's Karloff still in his like Serbian vampire drip. He comes back and he's still on his horse in the moonlight, and he's like, so there it is. Did you see that ending coming? No fooling around with ghosts because they take revenge. But watch out on the way home.
Yeah.
No, man, and then it zooms out, and then you see like the film workers are like running around, circling around him with
the camera,
all the fake cameras, and then the fake bushes,
branches, the lights,
the fake branches and the lights, and it's like, oh, it's a movie.
Yeah,
that's right.
For guys like us, no matter how many times we see that happen.
Yep.
No matter as long as it's done well, we're like, oh my god, it is a movie. Who would have thought? Oh my god, they're getting us to realize we're watching a movie.
It is also hilarious.
And I knew I was watching a movie, but I forgot for a second, and now I know.
And it was.
Yeah, I posted the ending to this on Twitter, and someone said that it was like where Kiarostami got the end of Taste of Cherry from.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. We love it. We love it.
Yeah, magic of the movies, but also it's one of those things where Bava has so highlighted how like all we've been able to do is freak out about how incredible of a constructor and kind of illusionist he is. So it's so funny to take a victory lap on that and literally just be like, I don't know how to end my movie, so fuck it. Boris Karloff screaming, "Dream about me" to like literally everyone in the audience, and then being like, here is how we actually made the dream, and here's how we generated all this atmosphere that just freaked you out for like 90 minutes. And
He's on
it's incredible.
Horse.
I love it. Yeah. It's the best. It's one of my favorite like Italian horror endings just ever. It's so funny.
It is funny.
But that's Black Sabbath. And if we're maybe pivoting towards the reductive rating round on this one as well, this one is a very solid to honestly kind of high for me.
Yeah.
It's very moody. It's very meticulously stylized. Again, Bava, I think, organizes this basically perfectly in terms of momentum and like every short, in my opinion, like there's not a weak link here. And it builds great, like going from a murderous like phone stalker that like predates like Black Christmas or When a Stranger Calls, and obviously predating kind of some of the Giallo stuff as well, and doing that very well, and then transitioning into vampiric gothic horror, this more ambitious sort of like Hammer production design with fog and decapitated heads and little vampire children, and turning it into this sort of tragic romance. And then waiting till the very end for just 20 minutes of just pure Bava. Candles, dolls, this hideously frozen, reanimated corpse in this like decadent, artificial, Argento-style dreamscape. Again, 10 years or more before Argento would even figure out that this would become his style and what everyone would associate with him, not with Bava. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's again, Bava once again incredibly ahead of his time, incredible director, incredible with mood. And every single one of these stories is a hitter for me, and it's all united by Boris Karloff, the legend.
Yep.
If Boris Karloff gets on screen and is like, "Listen to my 3 spooky tales," I'm gonna have a good time, even if the tales are kind of mediocre. And in this case,
I will say though,
pretty incredible.
But the fact that we watched the Italian version, and
yes,
it did kind of made it the Karloff contribution a little less.
Yeah, to have to live. You didn't like Italian Karloff? Come on, man.
No, I did not. I wanted to hear that great, brilliant voice, and it was like at a certain point, it's like, and because because he's wearing all that drip.
Yeah.
It looks like him if you know it's him. You know, and
I
at a
think he's
certain
good in
point,
the
it's like,
vampire
this-
segment.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Of course he is. He's good. He's good doing anything. But but if I'm watching Karloff, I want to be like, oh yeah, I'm in it. Yeah, like you know, and I didn't quite.
You just
out.
wanted Frankenstein to show up.
I wanted that same gravitas. I didn't necessarily want him showing up as the monster, but I wanted the same oomph.
Well, he did kill a kid, so that's something.
pretty sweet.
Who hasn't? Who hasn't?
Who amongst us?
Who amongst us have?
Mine, I'm gonna strongly for it as well. I don't think it's perfect, but it's very close to it, honestly. I think Bava is just an absolute master at suspense and tension and pacing and blocking and lighting. Like it's just, and in this one specifically, there's a lot of great use of sound and specifically, I guess, the absence of it, because there's like just to have most of this finale, specifically in the drop of water, just be quite literally just drops of water as she goes from room to room, and the most you really
and
hear
the
is
storm
like a
and
creak.
the cats and
Like it's very subtle, but there's that rhythm that's just kind of there and haunting you, and it's fantastic. He just has such a level of control that I find unbelievable. So yeah, strong 4, really awesome.
Hell yeah, for you, Rob.
I would kind of again 3.5 to 4 range. But I will say, like, I think this one, if I were to have seen it in the theater, I would have been way more gung ho about it.
Yeah, I would love to see this in the theater.
Which obviously you could say that about anything, but this one in particular, I feel like any kind of giallo Italian horror shit from like the 60s, 70s, when I watch it like by myself on a TV, there's something that's missing more so than other things. And so I think it really would have been like to see this with an audience on film would have impacted my enjoyment of it way more significantly. But yeah, it was great. I will be thinking about the drop of water specifically. I'll be thinking about that one a lot.
Yeah.
Just the visuals are so strong. They're so rich. And the ending of Karloff on the horse. It's great.
So funny.
Right.
You gotta love it, man. You gotta love the Halloween mindset.
We do.
Yeah.
Love Spooktober.
And we did. This is the big Halloween episode. Thanks so much for joining us, Rob. That was Creepshow from 1982, as well as Black Sabbath from 1963. This is usually the part of the show, Rob, where if you've got anything to plug, we usually have you do that. What's going on in Rob's world? Are you still just logging spooky movies right now? Do you want people to check you out?
Well, here's the thing. I'm logging spooky movies. I'm on Letterboxd. You can follow me. It's my name, Robert Franco. You can follow me on Twitter. I will probably delete my Twitter very soon. It's looking like the end is near for that. Or X is what we call it now.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But hey, you want me acting in your film? You want me on your? Actually, you know what? No, don't bother me. But if you got juice, bother me. If you got juice, hit me up. But if you're just some guy, fuck you.
He's only doing AAA features here.
I turn my nose at people beneath me. I turn my nose up at them. I'm trying to get to the top, baby.
That's right. We wish you the best of luck, Rob.
Oh yeah. That's right.
I want people to pay me for my opinions. That was for Josh.
All good. For our listeners, we are going to be back in 1 week's time where we are going to be doing the big episode number 300. And it is the episode that comes out on Halloween weekend, but it is exclusively over on the Patreon. So we wanted to make this the big Halloween episode for everyone. But for next week over on the Patreon, for you guys over there exclusively, we're going to be doing a big Craven blind spot that we have been kind of talking around for like 5 years. We're going to finally talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street. We've done a lot of Cravens, but we somehow have not covered that one yet. And we finally decided that it was time to do it. And it made sense for a Halloween episode. It made sense to get a big canon horror film out of the way. And we are going to be pairing it with a little movie called Wishmaster to keep the silly spooky zone kind of going even onto the Halloween weekend. So that's what you can expect over on the Patreon in 1 week's time. And then in 2 weeks' time, we are kicking off Noir-vember, where we are going to pivot hard, moving away from the spookiness and into the hard-boiled crime. And we have a good friend of the pod, Hessa Denny, coming back on to once again show us two films we have never seen, which she likes to do. She likes to pick stuff that no one has seen and recommend it to us. So we are going to be talking about two noirs that I don't even know that if I had watch listed before she told me about them. We're going to watch The Sound of Fury, as well as not The Sound of Freedom, The Sound of Fury, and Shadow on the Wall. Those are going to be the two noirs that are going to kick us off on a month of guys in fedoras killing people and feeling sad.
Hell yeah, we love that.
So, yep, that's what you can expect in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, that being said, that wraps it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.
Love you. Mwah, mwah.